this light just right over my head. It enhances my baldness, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
It's quite the glow.
Looks like a halo.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. That's it. That's
The
it.
halo.
Perfect.
Mr. Nullup, you'll let me know when we're ready to go?
I sure will. It'll just be another minute and we'll be all set.
Okay, thank you.
Are we broadcasting on cable or just Foxcast?
Just on Foxcast right now.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you're set to go whenever you'd like.
All right, I'm going to call this study session to order. We've got our first item on the agenda is a park maintenance funding discussion. Mr. Rager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Brian Rager, Public Works Director, and I think I have Joe Barrett with me tonight, our business manager. We provided to you, Joe, we provided to you some updated information from what you got during the budget process related to park maintenance funding. And at that time, the council decided to have a conversation at some point mid-fiscal year, and you've scheduled that meeting for October 3rd. So tonight, really, what Joe and I are after is a couple of things. One, we just wanted to check in with you to see where you think the conversation might go, or where you want to go with that conversation on October 3rd. And secondly, is there anything more you would need from us to help prepare you for that conversation? And that's really our purpose here tonight.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Newton, this has certainly been something that's priority of yours to make sure that we consider and address. Do you want to take a first comments and questions? We can't hear you, and I don't know if you're having a technology issue. We can go to... I'm going to think she's having a technology issue for a moment, so... Oh, maybe not.
No, I was. Sorry.
Okay.
My battery was dying. I had to plug into a power source.
I'm sorry, Councillor Newton. Okay. Would you like to go first?
Or would sure.
You okay.
I appreciate the information, and this is such a challenging time we're in. I think it's really important that, it's really important to me specifically, and I'd like to hear the thoughts of my colleagues, that we address our park maintenance challenges for the long term. I know staff wants to do the best they can to make sure that our assets are maintained, and we've got new properties that need to be developed. I think, at this point, the park maintenance, the PARF is probably the best funding source for that. What I was thinking when I originally brought this up was that we didn't know where we would be with COVID by the time we were doing the budgets, and we're still in phase 1. So I have a concern about how the community is going to be able to adjust to raising fees right now, even though any of our rates, even though there are appropriate funding mechanisms. I have a concern about that. So I guess what I was wondering what we could talk about on the 3rd is, if we're not in a position to feel that the community can absorb increased rates in January, what does that look like for where we are with park maintenance? What does that look like for where we would be with capital improvement program projects, if that's not the best option? I'm not saying that's what we would do, but I think having that discussion is important, because we need to let the community know what the ramifications are if we don't have adequate funding to move forward with CIP projects or park maintenance. Again, I'm not challenging the fee as a funding source. And I'm also very concerned about falling behind in terms of park maintenance. That's a priority for me. I know working with our park staff, they want to be doing the best job they can to maintain that asset, so that's important to them. And I also think we need to think about park maintenance and providing that service through the equity lens. And so what does that look like long term? And so I'll summarize really quickly. I was thinking it would be important on October 3rd to talk about where we would be if, and in general terms maybe, where we would be if we're not in a position to raise fees on the schedule that we had originally hoped. You all may feel differently, but that was what I was thinking would be important to at least have information on, so we knew what the ramifications might be.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Youth Councillor Calderon, anything you want to share or comments?
I'm not going to pretend that I know lots about budgeting, but the one question I did have is, since this is based off of utility bills and we are later this evening going to be discussing utility bills funding and if we will be moving forward with how we discussed last meeting, like with giving credit to people, will that affect this, or is this more, since it's like a long-term situation, will it overlap with when we have the other project going on?
Mr. Reger, you want to address that?
I'll start and ask Joe to fill in too.
Sure.
That we had set aside a certain amount of funds in the utilities, so this would not affect the park maintenance issue. Do you agree with that, Joe?
Correct. Yeah, I do. This is separate of a fee increase to cover the maintenance positions. In addition, the Parks and Rec fee is so small on utility bills. The customers that we've had reach out, it's almost de minimis to the Parks and Rec fee. The real hit on any utility relief we're giving is to water, sanitary, and storm.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Yeah.
Council President Goodhouse?
What I was going to recommend, I kind of agree with Councilor Newton, kind of recapping where we're at and where we've been. I think with this upcoming budget cycle, especially with being online and a lot of people paying attention to it, I think it'd be really important just to make sure that we've talked about how it works, what is involved in park maintenance, rather than just kind of briefly doing it. Make sure we go through a thorough description of what park maintenance is, why it's important, and kind of recap what we've had for the last years of what happens if we don't do it and what happens if we let it go, and the cost to get it back where it needs to be, and maybe break down a little bit more description of the different levels of what areas we do and what maintenance we do for each area and what we talk about. I think that's going to be a great time to really shine and get the word out to the residents, to let them know what we do and where that money goes and why it's important and what we do have to maintain and all the effort it does take. What I would ask.
So I hear you asking for more robust storytelling and very clear storytelling about both what's done and how the money is used and what it costs to do various activities?
Yes, I think that's going to be a lot more important rather than deciding what we're doing. It's going to be more important to do the concise storytelling, and even if there's pictures or examples and some kind of document afterwards that people can see and reference to know what we've done and how much effort it takes. It's one of those things where people go to the parks and they see these well-maintained parks, but they don't realize how much effort goes into it to keep them that way, and what would happen even if we stopped doing it for a year, and how much time it would take to get back to that way.
All right. Councillor Lube?
I don't think it's a secret that I'm a huge fan of our parks, and it's one of the things that I probably take advantage of the most in the city. And I regularly see the maintenance workers early in the mornings in Cook Park just cleaning up and doing a phenomenal job. But coming out of the budget hearing and the discussions that we were having, I go back to, I think we need to fundamentally address how we're looking at parks, especially through the equity lens, and where they should be going and what level we should be maintaining them at. Because I just remember the discussion of all of these really high level parks going into the River Terrace area and having everyone pay these additional fees for these parks that are out of the area in which they can walk to or participate in. And is that a fair way to do it? And I think we need to be having a bigger discussion on the levels in which we should be maintaining. And I'm hoping, this parks master plan that we should be getting, I think by the end of this year, is certainly going to help that discussion. And we shouldn't be making any funding decisions until we have that much broader discussion of what we want our park system to look like. And I just, I think it's really important that we take care of our parks, but we need to do it in a thoughtful way. And I think that requires us to really take a look at where we have the parks, what levels they're at, what funding structure. I don't disagree that the Parks and Rec fee is probably one of the best solutions. But again, do we go back to having the discussion is River Terrace is going to have, the nicest parks in the city? Should there be an additional fee for that area, for those parks, rather than asking the entire city to pay for it? So I think these are questions that need to be addressed. And I don't know if necessarily, the budget hearing on October 3rd is the best place to do it, especially because we won't have the master plan yet. And I think that's a big piece of it. So I think this is a much larger discussion, and I think we need to handle it. But I don't think there should be any budget decisions made until we have that discussion.
To Councillor Loob's point, I think, and I'll just tag on to that, Councillor Anderson, before we go to you, but I think that this fundamental question, and it really did come up during the budget hearings this year, particularly around the demands in the River Terrace area. We cannot lose sight of the fact that we've got a fair bit of the city that is really under-parked now, that's been in the city for a long time and does not have parks that are being maintained at the levels that are proposed for River Terrace. And while I don't want to see the parks in River Terrace, immediately decline, I think we've got to recognize that this is a serious equity issue and a basic public policy choice that we've got to make, to Councillor Loob's point, let the River Terrace community decide that they want to have a bunch of high-end parks that they're going to pay for differently. But I don't think it makes sense from my perspective, just from the outset, to say we're going to increase fees to make sure we can support a bunch of new parks when we've got a bunch of people, thousands of residents that have been living with very few easy ways to access our park system, and certainly not able to access any park that looks like the parks in River Terrace. So I'll just say my piece there. Councillor Anderson?
Thanks for the info, Brian. It's nice and thorough. This one FTE for Parks Grounds Supervisor, that's not the Steve Martin position, is it? That would be something additional?
No, that was the additional supervisor we proposed during the budget process. Okay. That's the span of control issue. So we would go from having one supervisor supervising up to 20 people in the summertime to two supervisors.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, thanks for the info.
Okay, any additional thoughts or questions? Or Mr. Rager, I heard you kind of asking for direction about what the October 3rd discussion is going to look like. Do you feel like you've gotten enough of that, or would you like more?
I think I have a good feel, and we will come prepared to talk about the River Terrace issue. I can hear that's a concern, and I've thought about how that came up during the budget process, and the way I couched it, probably I couched it maybe not the way I should have. So we will take that into consideration. Everything you've said. We'll come prepared to talk about this. And I guess a follow-on question to Councillor Newton's comments. You talked about wanting to know if the council were to decide to not increase rates, and if you didn't increase rates, what would it look like for not only park maintenance, but you said the CIP? And I guess a clarifying question would be, are you thinking in terms of all the rates, or were you just thinking about the park maintenance fee?
Well, I was thinking about all the rates, but I want to make sure you understand that I think you've got direction from the rest of the council that's slightly different than the way I was leaning. And so I don't want you to spend a bunch of time working on those areas when I think the rest of the council's focus is a little bit different. And that's fine. I just wanted to register my concern now that I'm a little bit a mustard seed concerned that since we're still in phase 1 and I'm hearing about more people getting laid off and underemployed, I'm a little bit concerned about if we decide to raise rates, what's that going to look like? But that might not be the time to have that discussion, Mr. Rager. So the rest of the council has sort of a different direction to go, and that's fine. I wanted to just register what my concerns were. So,
Councilor Newton, I think your point's well taken, though, and I guess what I would say, because Brian, you've got a lot of departments that have rates that are sort of in question here, and I guess I would just make a policy statement that may be helpful to you, and we can see what the rest of the council thinks about it. But I think it's more likely that if we're gonna raise any rates, like the rates we were supposed to raise last July and did not, it's not going to be the Parks and Rec fee first. I mean, at least in my mind, I don't think that's the highest priority when it comes to the making sure that our residents have water, sewer, and stormwater that are sustainable. I mean, this is important, but it's not as I don't think we can say that this is going to be the first fee we touch, but maybe the rest of the council feels differently.
And I guess for me, it's just a recognition that this is possibly out there. And I think it's important, if that's a possibility, for the community to know what the ramifications would be. I'm not saying, we would land on one side or the other, but folks need to understand if we don't raise rates, if we don't raise fees. I'm really concerned about park maintenance. I think it's underfunded, but I'm also concerned about the community's ability to absorb at this time, increases in fees and rates. And so I just think it's something, as we're moving forward to the budget process, and maybe staff has another way to handle it, we need to have, as we're moving forward with the budget process, we need to have in our minds that it's possible we won't raise rates, we won't raise fees.
Councilor Newton.
It's possible. Yeah.
Councilor Newton, this is Joe Barrett.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. So I just want to make sure that staff's hearing correctly what you guys are saying. Are we now questioning the July 1 rate increases that are scheduled that were approved by council, or are we talking additional rate increases to the already scheduled July 1 rates? That's what I want to make sure we're getting you guys the information you want.
Weren't we talking about raising some rates in January?
Yeah, we didn't make any changes in July, I don't think.
Yeah, during the schedule of or fees and charges schedule, all of the fees that were scheduled to go up July 1 were put off until January 1st.
And that's what I'm talking about.
I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Not any additional fees. You're talking about the scheduled rate increases for July 1.
And I'm not saying I think that's a good idea, Mr. Barrett. I'm just saying I think it's important to have a discussion if we decide, depending on where the community is, we may delay another 6 months. I'm not saying we would, but I'm concerned about what that looks like for all of our systems if we do that, and it's important that the community understand what that means if we don't. But I'm concerned about the community's ability on January 1st to absorb increases. I'm more comfortable with next July. I'm a little concerned about January 1st. So, not saying I would vote that way at this point, but I'm concerned.
Joe, I was tracking what you were saying until you said July 1 at the end there again. So, we didn't, the action that we've envisioned is January 1. So when you keep referencing July, can you help me and the community understand what you're meaning?
Yes, typically we do rate increases in July. So I was just assuming that if we delayed the scheduled January increases, we'd put them off until the regularly scheduled July date.
So
That's
you're
all I was
talking
thinking.
July of 2021.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, sorry, I was having trouble tracking which years we were talking about, or you were referencing. Okay.
No, I'm sorry, my fault.
That's okay. Council President Goodhouse?
I was going to mention that any proposed future increases might be also, if the staff comes back in a kind of a staggered phase-in process as well as kind of we looked at before. But also, if we are considering waiting on the January 1st and waiting until July of 2021, it might be good too to hear from staff how that may affect things. I understand that we don't want to add any extra cost to the citizens, but when we're talking about the parks increase, I think that was something like $1 a month. So we're really talking about a nominal amount. But also, I'd like to know what the repercussions and how that would affect the system as well, and affect the parks if we do decide to delay that again. How that may affect things and how that might put us behind, and what the cost might be to get back up. If it costs more to get back up by doing that delay back to where we need to be, it might be just look at all angles.
And
So
that's
that sounds
exactly
like
what I was saying,
Yeah,
Council
that's a
President
second.
Goodhouse.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a second to what Councilor
Right.
Newton
Yeah.
was saying.
And again, I'm not, I'm not even saying that's the direction we would go. I think it's important that the community understand the impacts if we don't keep our fees up so we can keep our systems up. That's my concern is, on the one hand, their ability to absorb increases, on the other hand, the impact on our services if we don't keep up. So that's exactly what I'm suggesting.
All right. Great, thank you.
It's also important to acknowledge that this is a system that we've not been funding appropriately for decades. So, I mean, I appreciate and am sensitive to what is being said, but at the same time, I'm not sure the middle of a global pandemic and economic crisis is the right time to right this ship. But the points about the long term are key, and I think explaining to the community is also important. So, Mr. Reger and Mr. Barrett, do you have enough?
I think I do, yes.
I think we do. Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate your time.
All right.
We'll
Yeah,
see
thank
on
you
the
for
3rd.
thank you for your hard work on the memo. It was very good. Thanks.
Joe gets all the credit for that. So
Way to
we'll
go,
see you
Joe.
on the 3rd. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
So it looked very official.
All right, the next item on the study session agenda is a briefing on the Washington Square Regional Center update project. Senior Planner Shanks.
Hello. It's really great to see everyone. It's been a while. Good evening, Mayor Snyder and Tigard councilors. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I will try to, I will keep to my allotted time. I know you've got a business meeting to get to after this. So thumbs up, yes. So this is the first in a series of briefings. So if you have questions after this, please reach out to me. There will be more information in the months to come, but this is the first in a series. You last actually heard about this project when you, as the contract review board, awarded the contract to a team of consultants to do this work. And so there will be more information in the future as well. So I'm going to switch over to my presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that?
We
No.
do not, but Mr. Nolup may be able to coach you on
Yeah, they're pulling you.
how to do it through the system.
Yeah, I've, hold on, let me give it another go. How about now?
No.
So are you sharing the leftmost option, the screen one option when you get presented?
I was initially, but and I'm doing that again.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
I think it's just delayed, taking a
Okay.
second or two. We can see it now.
Great. Okay, so this is project briefing number 1. First in a series. This is a long-range planning project, so it's not even scheduled to wrap up until middle to late next year. And like I said, you'll get briefings along the way. Outcomes likely include a package of policy and program recommendations, such as zoning code amendments, or perhaps even a vertical housing development zone boundary adoption. So we're still early in the game, so we don't know exactly what the recommendations will look like, but those are just kind of a range of things that you might see at the end of the day. So I know I attached a lot of information to the AIS. I just really wanted to give you a good understanding of the ground we've covered since we kicked off this project in February. But there's no way in this particular briefing that I am going to be able to cover everything in detail. So my goal this evening is really to give you a project overview. And Mike, it's not letting me advance my slide. That's a new one for me. Any suggestions?
Yeah, it looks like so you're using it inside the Teams
Yes,
browser, is that correct?
I am.
If you click on it,
There we go.
there we go. There we go. Yep.
I was using my my keyboard, and for some reason that was not the right thing. Okay, so my goal this evening is to give you an overview of what we've done and what we've learned so far. And generally speaking, we've done a fair amount of really targeted outreach to the community to convene a stakeholder working group to advise the project throughout the course of it. We've also done a lot of analysis. We essentially had to, do a bit of a delay because of COVID, because this project kicked off almost as soon as we were all sent home. So the timing was really crazy in the beginning, but we've gotten our feet back under us, and we're actually currently mostly on schedule. So just first off, just a reminder of why we're doing this update now. Generally speaking, long-range plans kind of have a shelf life of 20 years, and the original plan for this area was developed a little over 20 years ago in 1999. And a lot of things have changed in 20 years with how we work, with how we shop. I mean, online shopping was not really a thing 20 years ago, and also with how we travel. Uber and Lyft were not in existence. But the interesting thing here in this area, the physical form of this area has not changed very much at all. And so we actually have not kind of reach the vision that we laid out for this area 20 years ago. And so one of the kind of the questions this project is asking is, why not? Is there something that, we're doing from a policy or program perspective that's preventing like kind of the transformation that we're wanting to see? Or is it just market forces and different other things that we don't have control over? So we're really wanting to understand what's going on here. Obviously, we have a lot more and different housing and climate challenges today than we did 20 years ago. And so this project is looking to incorporate that into the vision and to refine it, to include strategies to address those things. And last but certainly not least, we really, really need to do a better job at including diverse voices and prioritizing equitable outcomes in our long-range planning projects. And the original plan, didn't have that lens at all. So those are all the reasons why we're doing this project now. Generally speaking, the goal of this project is to work with our project partners and the community to refine the original vision. So unlike the Tiger Triangle, as you might remember, we were kind of doing a do-over of sorts there. Like we really said, let's just start over from scratch. We're not really approaching the regional center, the Washington Square Regional Center, in the same way. We really feel like the original vision still has a lot of teeth and substance. And so it's more about refining and understanding what's going on to help it transform in the ways we want to see. Because even back 20 years ago, we wanted to see more housing and transportation and business employment options, and we still want all those things, generally speaking. But we want those things to be consistent with Tigard's strategic vision to be walkable, healthy, and inclusive. And we also really want to, make sure that the outcomes of this project are consistent with community priorities as well as emerging market trends. The world is changing, and it continues to change. So we've convened a very good and knowledgeable, diverse consultant team with Echo Northwest as the prime consultant. And then just want to point out that one of our consultants on the team, Verde, has been really helpful. They're a community-based organization, so they've been instrumental in helping us reach out to immigrant communities and historically marginalized communities in this area. And I think we've actually had a lot of success with their help. We actually have convened a stakeholder working group for this project. It's large and it's diverse, which is awesome. That was the goal of the project, is to really have many more diverse voices at the table. And you'll see why that is so important here particularly. So we have a stakeholder working group that's composed of community members, city and county staff members, community organizations, business owners and operators, obviously the consultant team, and then agency folks from TriMet, ODOT, and Metro, because this area is very large, and it's also crosses many jurisdictional lines. It's partly in Washington County, it's partly in Beaverton, it's partly in Tigard. There's many service providers, so we really needed to bring a big team and group to the thinking on this. I did include in your packet the stakeholder working group roster from our first meeting, so you could see the kind of people that are engaging with us on this project, as well as the alternative community engagement strategy. And I welcome any questions about that at the end of the presentation. We've also developed, in this world of COVID and everything being virtual, as a way to kind of continue to engage with our stakeholder working group throughout the project outside of virtual meetings. We've created a private online forum for them to have conversations with each other, as well as with the project team. And actually, we're just kicking that off and getting people signed up. We also have, oops, one too far. We also have a public webpage that's been up and running for several months. It allows people to sign up for our interested parties list. It also contains all our existing project documents in the lower right-hand corner on the right-hand side. We both have our meeting materials there, as well as all of the analysis that we have done to date. And then this is just a really simple project schedule to help you understand where we're at in the project. Like I said, we kicked off in March, and then because of COVID, we really kind of had delayed some of the community engagement activities that we had planned initially. So we delayed those, but in the meantime, we did a lot of analysis. So we were looking at opportunities, needs, and challenges in the area, and before we actually kind of really convened our stakeholder working group. And it's working out well. It's, you know, it's different for sure to do everything virtually, but so far I think it's working well. So now I kind of want to move on to kind of just giving you an overview of, you know, what we've learned. We've learned a lot of interesting stuff about the regional center, things that even surprised me. One of the things we're looking at is like who lives and works here, what are the kinds of businesses that are operating here, but also one of the things we're looking at that was always baked into the original scope was we wanted to make sure that any kind of refinements we made to any policies or programs, that it didn't actually cause displacement of people who are living here or nearby. So adjacent to this area is the Metzger community. And the Metzger community you might be familiar with is, so it's just east of the Washington Square Regional Center, and I'll show you a map soon, I promise. But the Metzger community is historically been a lower income community, although that's changing. But we wanted to make sure that things that we did over in the regional center were not going to negatively impact the larger community, especially this adjacent residential community. So we're doing kind of an in-depth residential displacement analysis, both in terms of what are the risks now to existing residents, both renters and homeowners, although primarily renters because they're more at risk, but also to look at if we made certain policy changes, would that actually change the risk of displacement in this area? So that's just kind of a little preview of some of the analysis. But in terms of who lives here, and this is why it was so important that we have a really diverse stakeholder working group. The one thing that I'll just point out, I'm not going to go through all of the data and statistics, but I do want to point out this one bar chart in the middle under that represents how many Black or African American people live in this area. So unlike the rest of the city, which hovers at about 2%, this area contains 22%, the population is 22% Black or African American, and this is from the most recent American Community Survey, so the census. So that's pretty large. I think it actually is almost half of Tigard's entire population of Black or African American individuals lives in this area. So we thought that was particularly of note. And so that's one of the reasons why we actually reached out specifically to new organizations that we haven't talked to before. One of them is the Hockey Community Organization, and that's spelled HAKI. And they represent Eastern African immigrants. They're a somewhat newer community organization, and they've been wonderful to work with. So I just share that with you. The other thing that's really interesting is that this area contains fewer two-person households. It contains more single-person households and more larger households, but half as many two-person households generally is what we'd see in the rest of the city of Tigard.
Susan, can you just comment on why that is?
I don't like.
It seems so unusual.
Yeah, it is. I mean, partly could be the types of dwelling units that are available, which is some information we can get through the census, but it's incomplete, so we can't specifically answer the question of why. We can speculate. Partly it's the type of units that are available, but partly it's I mean, obviously the people who are choosing to live there, but I really don't, unfortunately, have a better answer than that. But it's interesting and noteworthy that there's larger families and more single-person households in this area. And then the other really interesting thing to note is that unlike the rest of Tigard, which is about 60% homeowners and 40% renters, it's flipped in this area. It's actually, in this area, there's 63% renters, currently, and things change over time, obviously, as compared to the rest of the city, which is 40% renters. So those are some of the key statistics I wanted to share about who lives here. And then in terms of who works here, a lot of people work here. I mean, this is a huge employment center for the city of Tigard, but also, and Beaverton as well. This is inclusive of their numbers, as well. About 1,000 businesses operate here. Interesting over time, because we looked at trends over time. And one interesting trend was that the manufacturing and skilled trade sector, that there was an increase in employment in that sector and a decrease in the technical and professional sector, whereas retail stayed about the same. So we're looking at all these trends because we really want to understand what has happened and what is happening in this area, so that we can kind of update our code and our policies to reflect these changing trends. And here's finally, sorry, I should have had a map of the area much sooner in this presentation. I apologize. This kind of helps ground people and where things are at. But as you can see here, just from all the white topped roofs, this area is largely developed. There's very, very little vacant land, and that has been true for the last 20 years, if not more. So even when the original vision was put into place and this area was identified as a regional center, this area was substantially developed with a very specific pattern of roads and buildings and open space areas. So that's one of the things that we're kind of asking ourselves, like, how can we shift this area to be something more than it is today, given that there's such established patterns of physical form already? So we're looking at that very closely as to, where can we, in terms of changing or updating any policies or programs, where can we affect actual change in this area? So 50% of the land in this area is devoted to commercial activity. That's obviously one of the reasons why so many people work here. 20% is open space and public land. And as you can probably see by this image, unfortunately, that's not necessarily just public parks. It's a public golf course that's actually in Beaverton, but operated by Portland. There's the cemetery that is kind of wrapped inside the mall area. There's Fano Creek off to the west side. And then there's wetlands along the bottom edge that make up Ash Creek as it flows up into Fano Creek. So speaking of parks, there is one park in this area, but it's just outside the regional center on Hall Boulevard on the right-hand side of this photo. So this area actually doesn't have a lot of actual park space itself.
And that's a county park, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So in terms of residential displacement risk, again, there's more research or analysis that we need to do here, but what we've done so far is do some preliminary analysis just generally speaking, what our consultant is telling us, that renters are just generally at greater risk of displacement, especially if they're facing housing discrimination as well. But on the positive side, the rental properties that we believe are in this area, and like, you know, we can only kind of do a good job at really guesstimating based on public records. But it does a pretty good job of matching like kind of homeowners relative to addresses. So that we generally have a sense of where rental properties might be. And the fact that they're on small lots and scattered throughout, as opposed to like one whole block or one whole area being all rentals, that kind of concentrated rental property area can be more at risk sometimes. And so the fact that rental properties are scattered throughout is good news, you know, in terms of any kind of displacement in the future from either economic displacement or physical displacement. But we do need to do a lot of more analysis on this as we look at new land use scenarios and test certain things. And so we'll be looking for, you know, what is going to be the risk from any redevelopment if that were to happen in this area, and or risk from rent increases, which is called economic displacement. So definitely more to come on that. And this is just a map to show you generally what we found so far about where the rental properties likely are. So it's the properties in purple. Again, this is just to help us understand where they are. Obviously, households have their very unique circumstances, so we don't necessarily know their individual circumstances, but this is just the analysis that is available to us so we can help understand where there might be risk. Not that there is risk, but this where there might be. And similarly, this is where the like multifamily apartments properties are located in this area. So there's always the concern of if somebody redevelops in a whole apartment complex and displaces all of the residents by raising the rents, you know, that's problematic, you know, from the perspective of residential displacement. So we're looking at all of that. What we're also looking at is the market conditions and where there might be development opportunities. So what we're learning is that, as we all know, probably from firsthand experience, the retail market is changing. The area, actually, this area has a really good strength in the fact that the Washington Square Mall is a really strong performer in the world of suburban malls across the country. It's way up there in terms of being a strong performer, and it's a destination. Obviously, COVID has changed that trend to some degree, but we'll see. The challenge is obviously that stores are closing. As you all might be aware, Sears went bankrupt, but on the heels of that, the mall has already obtained land use approvals to redevelop the Sears site, but obviously COVID is going to impact when that happens. Threats and opportunities, there is a demand for walkable suburban destinations, so that's an opportunity here in this location, and I think the mall is already aware of that, which is one of the reasons why they actually proposed what they did with the redeveloping the Sears, the southern part of the mall. They're instead of like having the mall being more internally focused, they're turning outward and creating a plaza area and more outdoor space. So that's actually already had been starting to happen. Employment areas are also in transition. We don't actually expect to see, based on the analysis, any new industrial or flex development space happening here, because it's happening elsewhere in places where it's cheaper and easier for that to be happening. So we don't expect to see like the big warehouse developments here, but we are seeing conversion of existing buildings to different kinds of uses, to different kinds of flex and industrial space uses. And indoor recreation is one of the things that we're seeing a lot of in this area. So this is a picture of the trampoline gym. What we're also seeing is there definitely is, you know, in the future, there is potential for mixed-use development, especially at or near the Washington Square Mall site. And this is an image from the Sears redevelopment property, or proposal that they obtained land use approvals for. So they see that potential, and our analysis has also confirmed the same thing. There also is the potential for more housing development in this area, similar to what we've seen both in Beaverton and in Tigard. So there's potential here for things to change. And again, we want to understand it all so we can make some really good recommendations at the end of the day. These maps here, not going to go into any great detail, but suffice it to say, we're looking at sub areas. That's the map on the left-hand side of your screen. to understand the differences in the different sub areas, both in terms of land uses and redevelopment potential. And the map on the right is kind of highlighting where either specific properties and or kind of general areas have the potential for either redevelopment or infill. And then kind of one of the next question is, and what should that infill or redevelopment be? And that's what we're going to be asking the community, as well as we kind of look to the market analysis. We also need to understand if infrastructure would be an impediment to any redevelopment in this area. So with regard to transportation, as with the rest of the city, our goals for transportation and complete streets is that, people walking, biking, and taking transit, that those facilities are connected, safe, and comfortable. Unfortunately, this area is very lacking in that regard. And the original plan, it recommended a lot of transportation projects. And sadly, what we learned from looking back over the past 20 years, very few of those projects, practically none, or have been completed in the last 20 years. So this area is still very lacking in both connected streets, comfortable streets, and even safe ones because there's such a lack of sidewalks and or bike facilities. And while this area is served by transit, like there's a transit center on the mall property, it's served by transit, Hall Boulevard, Greenberg, but people getting to those transit those facilities for people to get to the transit facilities is very much lacking. So that's the bike and ped facilities. And as you may know, like there's a park and ride facility that's like a third of a mile from the actual transit center, across large roads. So there's lots of transportation issues that we need to take a hard look at and to really reassess the transportation projects that were recommended in the past to understand if they're the best ones to keep on the books moving forward. And this is just a map that just briefly shows you some of the barriers and issues in transportation in this area. And in terms of sewer, water, and stormwater, mostly, things are working here. There's certainly some deficiencies that even predated, the vision from 20 years ago, specifically with regard to stormwater. And that's just because there's so much surface parking, there's so much developed land with, impervious surfaces. So that's an old problem that this area has inherited. It's a problem that, obviously moving forward, we still want to address. There is a stormwater retrofit project on the CIP books, specifically for the Washington Square Mall site. So we're aware of it. It's something we need to address, but it's not necessarily going to impede. It could impede development because of cost. But one of the other issues that we're still investigating is there's a sewer trunk line kind of issue in that it's undersized for the area that it serves. This is one of the big trunk lines that CWS operates, and so we're working with them to understand if the size of that trunk line would impede any redevelopment in this area. So more to come on that as well. And this is just a map showing some of the existing utility projects that are out there right now. But next steps, our next steps are actually to do, now that we have a stakeholder working group, this kind of very defined group that is going to work with us throughout the project, we want to do broader community engagement to gather more ideas about the regional center's future. We're going to do that in a lot of different ways. And actually one really cool opportunity we have in October is that the mall site is going to be hosting weekend drive-in movies in their parking lot. And we have gotten their permission to utilize those events to actually to share with the community some city project information. So we'll be doing that as well as other things. Obviously, we're going to continue to work with our stakeholder working group. We're also going to continue to do more analysis specifically around development feasibility testing to basically have those, what we learn from the community and what we know and have learned from the analysis to inform, the alternatives that we create for this area will ultimately inform what kind of recommendations that we eventually bring to you. So that is my presentation. I'm sorry I was speaking so quickly, but I wanted to get through that. And I can welcome your questions if you feel like there's time.
Thank you, Susan. Council, we only have a couple minutes because we need the break for the broadcast of the regular business meeting. So we'll take very, very quick questions. Councilor Newton, anything, either comments or questions?
No questions. I read the report. Thank you for that. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the creative flexibility around the engagement plan since we're dealing with COVID. So I think they stepped up. So I appreciate that. So that's all I have. Thanks.
And Susan, not only would I commend the team for that, I would also say that I think some of the interesting information that's been uncovered really helps us understand our community better, even beyond just the purposes of this project. So thank you for highlighting those things. Councillor Lube, any comments or questions quickly?
No, I mean, I just would echo what's already been said, and I'm just continually amazed at how much the city is doing. This project, just has so much potential, and it's so interesting to find, to hear all of the information that you've presented and learn more about our community. So thank you.
Oh.
Councillor Anderson?
No, thanks, Susan. No questions. I imagine there's going to be some zoning changes. I just look forward to seeing the whole report.
Council President Goodhouse.
Great presentation. I loved really all the demographics and all the work you did to talk about who lives around there, what the makeup is, how many people really work there. That really helps kind of paint the picture of how that's going to be another focal point in Tigard. So I really appreciate all that time and research, and that really helps understand the area a lot more. And it's going to be exciting to see what happens there and how we can kind of incorporate all that community and all those different demographics into that. That really helps really craft what we want to make that be and how we want to engage that area. So it's glad that we're doing that that thorough work of finding out who's there, who's going to serve, what we want to do, and what we want to take care of there. So thank you for all that work and great presentation.
Youth Councillor Calderon?
No questions, but that was a great report. Thank you so much for the update.
You are all very welcome. Thank you for your patience. My speedy presentation.
Thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure as always. And we will now recess until the business meeting at 7:30.
And we actually have to get off of this Teams meeting, and it's a separate Teams meeting, just so you guys are aware.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you're free to proceed forward whenever you're ready.
All right, I will call this city council meeting to order. Deputy Recorder Patton, please call roll.
Councilor Anderson,
Here.
Mayor Snyder,
Here.
Youth Councilor Calderon,
Here.
Council President Goodhouse,
Here.
Councilor Newton,
Here.
and Councilor Lube.
Here.
All right. Let's move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please mute yourselves and participate. Okay, thank you, Mr. Nolop. Staff or council, any non-agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, staff we do not have any non-agenda items tonight.
All right. Public comment, written public comment was due today by 4:30 p.m. and call-in questions will be taken via telephone at 503-966-4101. The call-in number is on the screen now, and we will be calling on people momentarily. So if you do wish to speak during public comment, now would be the time to dial in. City Manager Wine, do you have any follow-up to previous public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, and Deputy Recorder Patton, I believe we had one piece of written public comment, is that correct?
Yes, one piece of communication from Dave Stoller.
And I will just comment on behalf of the entire council that is related to a matter that is likely to come before the council in the future, or could come before the council in the future as a quasi-judicial process, and therefore we need to refrain from responding, commenting, or having any other communication about that matter. But it was received, and staff is available and has already followed up and will remain available to the individuals who commented. And then if and when we were to hear this, we will not have any conflict due to previous discussions. So comment there. And then Mr. Nolop, do we have any phone-in public comment tonight?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, we do not have any phone-in comments.
Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which is used for routine items, including council meeting calendars, appointments to boards and committees, and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for the meeting. These items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Tonight, we are proclaiming October Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Is there a motion?
Councilor Lube, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Councilor Newton, I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilor Anderson,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder,
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse,
Yes.
Councilor Newton,
Yes.
and Councilor Lube.
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda is adopted unanimously. Item number 5 has been, I think, pulled from the agenda because the Planning Commission meeting was canceled last week. It will come back to council at a later date, and additional notice of that hearing will be provided. Our next item on the agenda is item number 6, which is consider a resolution accepting the Southwest Corridor final conceptual design report. We have multiple, both staff from the city and TriMet on. I'll have them introduce themselves. I want all the speakers, I want to encourage all of you to get through your presentation relatively quickly so that the council has time to both deliberate and ask questions as needed. So I've seen your the presentation and you have a lot of slides, so I'm just giving you a heads up about that. Please allow time for questions. Mr. Pagenstecker?
Good evening, Mayor Snyder, councilors. For the record, I'm Gary Pagenstecker, Tigard's Urban Design Team Lead for the Southwest Corridor Project. Thanks for pulling up the slides. We were last here in April to review the draft conceptual design report and to give City Council the opportunity to comment and provide direction to TriMet in preparation of the final CDR. Today, TriMet staff here with me to present the final draft include Dave Unsworth, Director of Project Development and Permitting, Guy Ben, the Transit-Oriented Development Program Manager, and Jeb Doran, Senior Project Manager. The presentation will focus on the status of the Tigard issues identified in Council's April 21st workshop and as outlined in your agenda item summary for this evening. So welcome, Dave, Guy, and Jeb. With 30 minutes for this agenda item, our PowerPoint presentation will be brief, followed by any questions Council may have, then Council's consideration of and vote on staff's recommendation to adopt a resolution to accept the final CDR as identified in the City of Tigard TriMet Memorandum of Understanding. So for context, we begin with a schedule of project milestones you see here. Draft environmental impact, which you see preceded the locally preferred alternative. That's a sort of a significant thing in terms of in what the final environmental impact statement represents. We are now in final draft conceptual design report acceptance. And then, of course, everyone's waiting on November 3rd to see whether the project gets funded. Final environmental impact in winter, that's January of 21, I believe. And then construction beginning. Next slide, please. I just want to take this moment to acknowledge that Mayor Snyder has an interest in the final environmental impact statement status and will be asking questions of TriMet, who is prepared to answer that interest. Next slide. The agenda item summary identifies issue areas Council reviewed in April. Council's direction to TriMet and staff's assessment of how they are addressed in the final CDR. Staff's conclusion that these concerns are unresolved does not mean progress has not been made, but is more reflective of the timing of various processes and the limits of the conceptual design report as a conceptual report. As a conceptual level document, the final CDR roughly correlates with other project development design efforts, such as the 30% final environmental impact statement plan set and the basis of design report that staff is currently commenting on, and the transit-oriented development work plan, which substantially advances the design of Tigard's urban station areas, but due to timing have not been wholly included in the conceptual design report. The CDR's design value statements referenced in the agenda item summary as carrying Council's direction will be included in the basis of design report to guide project developments to 60% expected in the end of 2021. Proposed resolution includes an invitation to TriMet to share its progress with Council on these issues prior to completion of 60% design. Next slide, please. So before I hand it over to Jeb and Guy, Council should know that our efforts in partnership with TriMet are bearing fruit. And though perhaps at times messy, we are working well together. So Jeb and Guy will address in more detail over the next 10 minutes, perhaps, TriMet's understanding of Council's concerns, which are listed here, and the process anticipated for their resolution. Jeb and Guy?
Next slide. It's actually Dave Unsworth. So Mayor, Council, great to have you back. Great to be back here in front of you virtually. Very quick, a couple slides. You know why we're doing this project. It's about the people moving here. It's the number of jobs that are growing here, and it's connecting the dots. Next slide. That's That's a different slide. So this is really about connecting the dots, and it is an extension of the Green Line from downtown Portland all the way out to Bridgeport Village, connecting these stations. And it really is addressing congestion, climate change, and affordability and economic disparity. Next slide. This just shows some of the highlights of things that we are doing. It shows, as you will see, depending on how you count that, 5 to 6 stations in the city of Tigard, 68th, Elmhurst, Hall, Bonita, Upper Boons, and at Bridgeport. It's connecting those dots. It's those jobs. It's hopefully fulfilling the Tigard Triangle dream of what's going to happen there. And we're working closely with you on the Todd Charter as you'll hear a little bit later. And it's about moving people, 37,000 people, and the travel time. Next slide. Again, it's about equity. We promised on our property that we will own 950 of affordable units with help from our friends. That's reusing part of that, part of our property here. And really, it's a more equitable quarter than most people think of number of people out of people of color within a half mile of our stations. Next slide. Again, it generates a whole bunch of money from the feds, $1.3 billion from the feds. Anticipate about 228,000 jobs, and 40 of those are disadvantaged business enterprises that have already been hired, but part of the project from a design standpoint. Orange Line, we actually put $175 million worth of contracts to disadvantaged business enterprise. Next slide. Boy, we didn't get the shorter, simpler one. This is the longer.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, Dave. So I'm just going to jump ahead to this slide, which is the next one. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I want to be succinct here. There's been a lot of engagement, and it's really been centered around the conceptual design report, improving that, looking for impact back. I would say there are a number of things that we've really focused on updating the CDR. It's really putting Todd and the mobility solutions into context with the framework that was prepared. It's really looking how we better illustrate the project design aesthetics, focusing on where we need project identity for our stations and where local flexibility can come in for those stations, and really putting a big emphasis on affordable housing commitments on and around our stations. So those are some of the big changes between the draft CDR that came out in January and our current final conceptual design report. Jeb?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So you covered some of those points, so I'm going to jump right into some of the issues that did change to highlight the public comment and the portions that really were updated in the CDR, starting with the station access framework, because this project is more than just about light rail and transit. It's about accessing transit and being able to support other modes like walking and biking. Walk-on access is the primary mode in our system, and it also reaches about 65% for the mode split on this project, and is the primary mode for access at all stations in Tigard. Bus service is always important for these projects, including a high amount of transfers at both Hall and 68th, and also auto access at Park and Rides continues to be important to capture riders in the outer portion of the region. TOD is also placed into context, as Dave mentioned. This is really about helping support mixed use and mixed income developments to support transit ridership, but also a recent PSU study shows that it increases a number of people who choose to walk and bike over driving, and resulting in less car dependency. I'll hand it over here to let Guy talk a little bit more about TOD. Guy, are you there?
Mute.
You're still on mute.
Jeb, can you take it from here until the guy figures out the mute button, maybe?
Sure. I'll just go ahead and say that we've got a strong effort at TriMet to start some new TOD programs and be able to support TOD with our partnerships with our jurisdictions, recently adopting some more guidelines, which Guy can go into here shortly. We also worked with City of Tigard staff to really look at some of the station areas at Elmhurst, Hall, and 68th to really emphasize how we can support TOD at the station areas. We also updated for mobility services. It's really about, as we know, technology is changing how people move, increasing the choices that they have for how they get around. And by placing these into this context, we're able to help better support connections to transit and have placement of partnerships with private providers and space for them to operate in concert with transit. For our station area, I'm going to go ahead and skip a couple of slides here. So the partnership here is really important for station access. We know there was a strong public support for some of the projects that were listed in Tigard and the CDR, especially with the 217 MUP and 72nd Avenue studies. All of these are seeking environmental clearance. They're currently not funded, but we do continue to work with staff to pursue alternative funding sources. The CDR also has a toolkit included, so really this is about the look and feel of the project and being able to understand that this is a transformative project, so thoughtful urban design really matters, both in being able to maintain some visual consistency in the system, but also retain the flexibility to enhance station areas and support local visions. The CDR has a lot of images in it that now depict what the design elements are that we've used on past projects that have been successful. The images really illustrate both the typical standard improvements in our system, but also the alternatives that we've used to help fit the project elements into their context. Tigard really has a lot of structures and systems and walls that all need to fit into different contexts in Tigard, including urban, natural areas, and streetscapes, as well as industrial areas in the railroad corridor. Quickly, we'll do a alignment walkthrough, starting with the structure over I-5 heading into the 66 station. We travel over I-5 and under 99W to avoid the traffic there, and then transition from City of Portland into Tigard to fly over 68th and Red Rock Creek. Really important architectural features here that we need to fit into the context of these natural areas in and around Red Rock Creek, as well as the urban context. 68th station is also important as we need to, as it serves the both Tigard and Portland, both Metzger neighborhoods, Crestwood and the Northern Triangle area. We have up to 350 spaces in the park and ride here, as well as bus transfers from the 993 and 94. We know there's a lot of key issues here to address by 60% design, including improved bike and pedestrian experiences, safety for pedestrians at 64th and 68th, and access to the station, working with ODOT and their repaving projects to look at potential mid-block crossings near the station, as well as raised protected bike lanes and links to the planned Red Rock Creek Trail. Guy, can you connect in?
Can the administrator unmute him? He's unable to unmute himself. It was in the chat box, so unless he isn't, you need to keep spinning there.
Okay. I'm just going to keep going then. So for this particular station, we really work closely with Tigard staff to help integrate their TOD and vision for this area, helping to understand how to better place any surface parking to anticipate TOD and to be able to coordinate the development of this area and be able to integrate it into the station area, as well as the station access and other pieces. On 70th Avenue, there's a side running alignment here. We're able to support the historic street grid of the triangle by developing the 70th Avenue right away as a pedestrian spine through the neighborhood to help improve connectivity and walkability. We do continue to work with staff to address the quality of the pedestrian experience on 70th, as well as some other scope and design issues in this area. For Elmhurst Station, this was a big win. We were able to make some transitions and adjustments at this station area to better support the TOD vision here, including realigning the route to sort of square it up with with Elmhurst alignment. This is really sitting in a crossroads of mobility at 72nd Avenue and transfers to the line 97, as well as bike and pedestrian facilities, the future MUP over 217, and connections to existing Red Rock Creek. We do continue to evolve these designs for station location and just trying to fine-tune this with staff. The 217 overcrossing is an important link for transit, as well as an opportunity for a pedestrian connection in the 217. MUP. That does travel through the Knez wetlands and over Red Rock Creek. So at 60%, we really have to have the structural, architectural elements respond to that sensitive context. Hall Boulevard is one we really continue to work on with city staff. This is a connection that serves the historic downtown and Hunziker industrial areas, including a 100-space park and ride. We do have important bus transfers as well as some commercial streetscape improvements south of Ash Street on Commercial to upgrade sidewalks and bus stops to facilitate transfers from line 76 and 78. And then streetscape improvements on to realign Hunziker for traffic mitigation and Hall Boulevard to enhance the bike and pedestrian facilities and include 3 lanes. The OMF here is located in Tigard, and we do continue discussions to help support the TOD here as the centerpiece of the downtown vision. This is really our centerpiece of the work plan efforts that we've had with staff to look at integrating transit at the station, improving pedestrian and bike access, and then support for that TOD and Tigard vision downtown.
Jeff, I'm back on. Sorry about that.
Good. Yeah, go ahead and cover the TOD on this one.
Great. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Apologies for that. With regards to Hull Station, we've been working very closely with your TOD team to look at the alignment, and very at a high level, we TriMet and Tigard have very similar TOD objectives, really, where our aim is to develop, in partnership with developers, local partners, is to deliver, mixed use, mixed income, TOD transit-oriented developments adjacent to the station areas, which will serve the community, deliver housing, and also provide employment and opportunities to the neighbourhoods in which they're situated. With regards to Hall Station as it stands, clearly this is, we understand Tigard's vision, and we actually stand aligned with Tigard's vision to make this a key part of the downtown area, integrated with the downtown area. So we've been working hard, with your team to really unlock the full potential that can be done here, and maintain obviously the project goals and objectives. So it's pretty exciting. There's Jeff may have mentioned it before I jumped on, but from an operations perspective, looked at the reorientation of the OMF. And what I think is important when you are looking through this slide and also the previous slides on the other station areas in Elmhurst and 68th Avenue, that these are these CDR plans and drawings represent are not the final output from a TOD study, and that they are certainly subject to change as we move through the process.
Thanks, Guy. I'm just going to touch briefly on these last few stations in reference to time. So the Bonita station is very important. It elevates over the railroad, Bonita, and Ball Creek, as well as would be the only elevated station in our system. So architecture here is going to be important, as well as the connections to some of those existing facilities like Fano Creek. Upper Boones Ferry is an at-grade station, split near-side platforms in order to help facilitate safe crossings of Upper Boones Ferry. There is some streetscape here to help make that connection. And then also here at Bridgeport, which is just outside of the city limits, this is an important station because there are a lot of important bus transfers, as well as up to 950 spaces connecting into the facility. So design iteration is very important moving forward. We'll continue to work with staff and seek input from the public, both at 60% design, but also at 90% and on to final 100% design over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. So it's really important to get that feedback and help guide our decision process.
So I'll wrap up here really quickly. The work that we're doing will continue on the transit-oriented development work plan, and looking at optimizing our stations at 68th, Elmhurst, and all. We want to move forward with the MOU items that we have. In the near term, we will have the FEIS published, most likely to be in January of 2021. We will hopefully be successful at the ballot in November. And then we would look to move forward with our 60% design, incorporating comments made by your staff with on the 30% drawing. So That's our presentation. And Mayor, I apologize. We had trimmed this down to about 25 slides, and we didn't get the right slide deck in here. So our apologies for taking a little bit longer. We're ready for your questions, though.
No problem, Mr. Unsworth. I'm going to kick it off though, and then we'll have the rest of the council. But I've got a couple of questions and really things that I want to make sure the entire council and frankly our community have an opportunity to hear before we take action on this. And the context for my questions I think is important, and that is that the draft environmental impact statement and work that was done multiple years ago now, the project looks much different than it did at that time. There's a proposed operations and maintenance facility that will have both, land impacts and transportation impacts, and then visual impacts. There is now traffic impacts on Hall Boulevard and Upper Boones Ferry that were likely not were not covered in the DEIS. And so the context for my question, that's part of it. On behalf of both myself, the entire Tigard City Council, and frankly, the people of Tigard, our staff have been trying to get information about the final environmental impact statement, and we're struggling. We're not getting answers to the questions about what those impacts are. And I believe the people of Tigard, this city council, and myself as mayor deserve to know what those impacts are. And since none of them were studied in the DEIS, I guess I just want to understand why we're having so much trouble having our staff obtain that information. And I don't know whether the barrier is with TriMet Metro, the FTA, or a combination of all three. And I want to make sure that we can get that information to our staff and to our council expeditiously, and not when it's final in some January document. So can you respond to that?
I can. Boy, there's a lot of stuff to respond to in there. I would tell you, first off, if you recall, Jason or Mayor Snyder, the O&M facility, the operating and maintenance facility, was located in the Hunzinger Industrial District. We did, at the very close to the end of the draft environmental impact statement, pick a preferred alternative that went to 68th and then went and had a station at Elmhurst and came across. There wasn't a lot of analysis on that, although we did present some to you, the steering committee, and our meetings. I would say that most and the best way for your staff to have gotten information and input on this is the conceptual design report. It's a 250-page document that really lays out what the vision is for the project and how it looks like. There are things that you've identified, traffic issues. So we've had ad nauseum number of traffic meetings with ODOT, with Washington County, with your staff, to look at Hall Boulevard, to look at 68th, to look at Upper Boones. In fact, there's an MOU that we've done on Upper Boones to understand, is there a way that we can grade separate that? In the draft environmental impact statement, that was an ag-grade crossing. It's still an ag-grade crossing. We're looking to see if we can grade separate that with help from others, along with traffic associated with lower Boones Ferry. So those are things that we've been really looking at pretty hard. Your staff has also had a chance to review and is currently reviewing the 30% designs. So let me talk about the final environmental impact statement, and I'd like to be as clear as I can. First off, it's not TriMet's document, it's not Metro's document, it is our federal partners' document. And unlike other past environmental impact statements that I've worked on, we have different Federal Transit Administration NEPA or environmental document, attorneys there, and a consultant that's helping them review it. And what we found out, this is probably one of the more complicated projects that they've ever dealt with, we've ever dealt with. And they're asking for a number of different revisions. And only at that point, after their legal attorney has done legal sufficiency, are they willing to actually then let some of that stuff go. So when do I think, or I've asked Chris Ford, who's managing this, when does he think that's possible? He thinks that late October, November, we'll start seeing some of these documents out to staff for staff to review. I will say that the City of Portland City of Tigard put in a number of comments on the draft environmental impact statement. I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to address those very publicly through a lot of different meetings, through citizen advisory committee meetings where we've gone through traffic, where we've talked about transit-oriented development. I think the work that Guy has been doing with your staff has been great as it relates to Hall, 68th, Elmhurst. We've shifted our station in order to address some of the comments that you've reached. So in the end, it's a complicated document. Why is it complicated? We have 5 different agencies, Mayor, that are also need to approve this. One is the historic side of that, historic and archaeological, with the tribes and the State Historic Preservation Office. They've got to give their okay before this thing gets out. We have the Department of Interior who needs to sign off on parks. We have NOAA Fisheries, who will be dealing with Red Rock Creek as it relates to stormwater and fisheries. And we hope, we put in a biological assessment January. We haven't heard back from them on that. So, and then finally, there's traffic, and traffic involves FHWA, ODOT, and your staff as it is. So complicated. I appreciate the frustration that you are expressing to us about why you haven't seen some of the draft chapters and some of that presentation, but I think there has been opportunities for your staff to get some of this information through the public meetings that we've had and in the project management process that we've had that talks about where traffic is and the great coordination that we've been doing on transit-oriented development. So that's a long-winded response, Mayor. Hopefully that addresses some of that. You may want to drive into that.
Are you saying that even though many of our staff are part of the project team, the FTA is preventing them from seeing this? The project team that's sort of core to TriMet and those other agencies, whoever's working on it clearly can look at it. I guess I'm just trying to understand the distinction between that and Tigard staff who are assigned to the project and why there's some difference there.
Well, I think it's the writing of the chapters and it's the portrayal of those, so things are changing on the federal side. As you will know, we've got a president who is saying downplay some of the environmental impact statement documents, and we're having to rewrite some of those, frankly. So the Council on Environmental Quality has given us new rules for climate change and new rules for cumulative impacts that downplay that. So their attorney wants to make sure that we get it right. Now, that being said, your staff have been in all the conversations about traffic. Your staff has been in a whole bunch of design conversations about what works, what doesn't, and have not been shy about pushing back to our staff about what they see and what they're concerned about: traffic, pedestrian crossings of Hall 99th, such as that. I know it's an unsatisfactory answer, but it's the answer I can give you today. That's all I know.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the purpose of these things, it is to make the public aware and to allow everybody to be able to understand the visual impacts, the traffic impacts, and all these other impacts. I hear you say that one follow-up I would have is the Upper Boones Ferry crossing. My recollection, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that what made it in the DEIS was actually a grade separated crossing, and it was only after we couldn't afford it that was changed to a grade separated or a at grade crossing. And those are the kinds of things that I think the public deserves to know about and to be aware of, and have some transparency to. So I mean, would you support if you're not able to provide the Tigard staff with the information we're asking them to get, do you support them trying to connect with the FTA directly to get the information that we're looking for?
So I'd ask your staff to put together the list. I think we've actually provided a lot of that information through the number of meetings that we are, but if there are specific things that your staff is looking for that we haven't provided an answer to, rather than the write-up and the draft chapters, let's have that conversation. Okay. Let's look at it that way rather than, frankly, I would rather your staff not call our federal partners, because that adds a whole bunch of complications.
Okay. If we can just get the answers to the questions, I think that's what we care about. I don't think we care about looking at the actual words, but we want to know what the various impacts are. So I will make sure our staff follow up on that, and I know a number of them are listening tonight, so I'm confident that they'll work on that. Okay, I've dominated the time. I'm sorry. Councilor Lube, are you ready for any comments or questions?
Yeah, I want to thank TriMet for, that I've sat in on a couple of extra meetings and been able to really understand what's going on with Hall Station, and Councilor Newton and I were able to see 68th yesterday as well, and so that's really helpful to see as we move along, which obviously isn't reflective in this conceptual design. But I have, I guess, just a question more directed to the staff. In the meeting packet, the staff recommends council adopt the proposed resolution with direction to resolve outstanding design issues identified by the Tigard City Council. And I'm curious what that looks like. And I appreciate all of the information in there on exactly what's going on with each station. And so I just want to confirm that you're comfortable with this conceptual design as it is, and the progress that we're making, and that we're going to continue to make progress if this is approved.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Love. There is a bit of a trust that the TriMet will come through on this. We think that given our current working relationship at the staff level, that, and as demonstrated in particular in the transit-oriented design work on the station areas, that we are going to come to a good place in terms of the outcomes that are only sort of indicated in part through the CDR, because it's a point in time that has been passed now and superseded by these other design development processes. So I think the CDR, given its scope and its timing, fairly represents through its design value statements the direction of design that will answer council's interest in the 6 areas that we've identified.
Thank you. That was my question.
Councilor Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the same question as Councilor Lube, because she and I have had a couple of meetings with TriMet, which were much appreciated. Got a little bit more information. I just wanted to, and I understand where we are with 30% design and how we can't answer every question. I guess I just want to reiterate for everyone listening that it's really important to us as a community and as a council. I believe my colleagues would agree that Hall Street station really be integrated into our downtown. So I think it's really important to me that that's the lens we look through. We were able to answer some questions about the width of Hall, or ask some questions about the width of Hall and how that affects the connection to downtown. I know that a number of people in the community were looking forward to using that station as a way to get to into Portland, and without a lot of parking, they're concerned that might not be a good option. So I think the other issue is transit bus service being improved from the south end of Tigard into the Hall Street station, so that can be used and bring people into that area. So I'm not going to go on, but I just want to make sure that as we're looking at the Hall Street station, we're mindful of the importance of that being integrated into our downtown, and how important that is to the community. And I did share Councilor Lube's concern, I guess I'll say, and appreciate you asking the staff about the comfort level with moving forward. And everyone will know that I'm a really reader of these documents, and this is petty, but I was wondering why in the executive summary it said that the project design reflects nearly a decade of planning between TriMet, Metro, Oregon Department of Transportation, the cities of Portland, Tualatin, and Durham, and Tigard was not named. So maybe a typo. Anyway, sorry. I noticed.
You are a close reader of that document.
Yeah, I am. And again, like I said, if we can move forward with some confidence that we'll be able to continue to work these out. I understand you can't have more detail at 30% design, and I just want to make sure we're mindful of the importance of the Hall Street station to our community as integrating it into the downtown. Thanks.
Youth Councilor Calderon?
Yeah, that was a great report. I can't say I read every single bullet point within the 200 plus pages, but I got through quite a bit of it. And looking at the stations, I really do like the layout of them. As far as I know, they look good. I'm not also a professional when it comes to the architecture, but I'm really liking how there's going to be lots of accessibility with bikes. I particularly saw how there's going to be lots of bike locks, and as an avid biker myself, it is the worst thing when there's no bike locks and I have to chain it awkwardly somewhere else. And I'm very happy to see that, as well as generally just the walkability of all the stations. And I would agree with Mayor Snyder about being a very climate conscious city, and I would like to see the contents of all the climate impacts for this project. But overall, fantastic.
Councilor Anderson?
Nothing much new that my colleagues haven't already said. We've made a lot of progress, and just emphasize the Hall Street station once again, and just keep working with our Tigard staff.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yeah, I was gonna, maybe it's a little bit of a comment, but also, I guess a bit of a question. I know we've been working on this for years. I know back years ago when Councilor Anderson and I were working on the MOU, we really focused on the Hall Street station. This is gonna be more for discussion, but it seems like there's a lot of these topics that have been discussed for years. We keep talking about them. I'm on a liaison for the TCAC and the TTAC. They've both of us sent letters to Metro and TriMet specifying the need, multiple letters for the Hall Street station, for pedestrian safety. A lot of these concerns keep coming up, but it seems like to me that for years we've been bringing concerns up, we've been talking about issues, and we get the same kind of responses that, yes, we understand, we're going to take care of that, we're going to do that, but every time we come back and look at something, we're still in the same place where everything's unresolved. We haven't quite been heard. I look at the proposal, and staff writes in every single portion that this council's concern remains unresolved. And so, you know, we're being asked to approve this and move forward. And as Gary Packensacker said, you know, with the trust TriMet. But my question is where's the trust with TriMet if we've been for years talking about this, saying that things are going to be changed, but we're still sitting here with a document that says that all of our concerns are unresolved. Citizen committees, their concerns are unresolved. And in the different TCAC and TTAC, their concerns are unresolved. So how do we move forward when we constantly are having unresolved issues and still not making any progression?
Councilor, I think that's a great question, and I really appreciate that. And I think it's important to remember what the consensual design report is intended to do. It is a snapshot in time that helps us make sure that we understand where the project scope is and what it is, what it looks like, and what the issues are. It's also important in that it captures the core values that are going to guide our decisions over the next few years. Many of these issues have evolved significantly over the past few months, and while it may not appear in the graphics of the document itself, they have advanced. And I'll use one example of Hall Boulevard, where we've worked with staff to identify a great cross-section that is Tigard's preferred cross-section. We're working with ODOT to take that through a review process to solidify that as the preferred for bicycles and pedestrian safety and all the things that you just mentioned. So that's advanced a lot, and those details don't show up in the CDR because for us to resolve that for final design is really a 2-year process. With an alignment and a project that is this big and this vast and this complex, it's going to take us several years to get through these design issues. So what really matters is that the design value statements that are in the CDR capture the intent of Tigard's vision and the core values of your community, and helping direct us and guide those and make decisions about those core values, and then check in frequently with the community and the public and yourselves to make sure that we're on track and we're still headed in the right direction. And so this process is set up.
But Jeb, what matters to us in our community is that those things are actually going to get done, and that we have a commitment, and that just because something's challenging doesn't mean it's not going to get done. Or I mean that I think is what you're hearing some frustration with, is that, you know, we don't ever get a, yeah, we'll do that unless it's illegal. I mean, that would be the kind of thing that you guys could commit to, that time and time again, we don't get those kinds of responses. And the other thing I would make sure that you and Mr. Unsworth understand is that this council has very few points at which we get to vote on or approve anything related to this project. And so we have to take the few opportunities we have to try to get the answers that we need so that we can continue to support the project. Council President Goodhouse, sorry, back to you. I didn't mean to interrupt, but.
No worry. And so my question, I mean, this is the final CDR. I mean, does this have to be voted on now, or, you know, can TriMet come back and show us more progression on this, and we come back in this in 3 months and look at it? Because I frankly, to be honest, don't feel comfortable and don't know if I would vote for this, knowing that through the years we've been having the same thing as the mayor stated. You know, we haven't really got a concise yes, we'll do that, or yes, we'll move forward. And unless that's actually in there and actually that move forward, we don't. The mayor made an excellent point. We don't get very opportunities to vote on this. I'm not going to give up one of our final opportunities to have a say or make sure this goes the way we want. This is our one and only shot at this big project coming through Tigard, and everyone else wants to see it done right. We want to see this done right, so 20 years from now they said this project was done right, rather than someone looking at it and saying, well, what the heck, why was the crossing not done right at Hall, or why was there not pedestrian biking or walking, or you know, all those safety features put in here. I want to see this done right rather than hope and pray that it might be done right later.
So I just want to reiterate and reassure you that we are committed to doing it right, and doing it with right being you, City of Tigard, helping define what is right for your community. And we are committed to that, and the process is intended to pursue that vision and that as a goal. I will say there are multiple opportunities for you to continue to check in. We have, you know, permitting processes that we still need to go through, multiple design process. The 30% design is currently into your staff for review and comment. And so we are committed to staying engaged with you and your community throughout this process to ensure that we deliver the project that is the best possible outcome for you and your community.
Councilor Newton.
Yeah, really quickly, you made the comment that what we're really looking at, or what the most important thing to be considering, is the values statements. And we've been talking a lot about design. I know how that's how value statements, you can visualize them. But could you point to those again, either in your presentation, or I'm kind of skimming through the report, and could you point to those again for us?
Yeah, I don't have any examples of them in the presentation, but if you looked at the text, specifically, I believe in Chapter 7, which is for the Segment C in Tigard, with each one of the station area sheets, there's a list of design value statements that were things that help guide us for, like, I'm going to use Hall as an example. Like, we know that integrating the station and transit facilities, the bus services with the light rail transit is an important element, and so there is language in there to reflect that as a primary goal that we've heard consistently from Tigard over the years and in staff. And we worked with them on the language, Gary and others, to make sure that it captured that and framed that correctly. Pedestrian access is another one.
I just couldn't find it. I knew I saw them, I just couldn't find it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Council President Goodhouse.
I want to circle back to my question. I don't know if it really quite got answered. What is wrong with delaying this and having this come back to council in 3 months for a vote when we see more of a concise commitment to what we're looking for?
And maybe the answers to the questions that I was raising about the FEIS. I know, Dave, we're not going to see the actual FEIS, but answers to all the questions.
There's nothing that says this has to be adopted by your council. This was our report to you saying, look, we've made great progress. We've been working with you. I think in Gary's report was suggesting that we've been working cooperatively and moving forward. You don't have to vote on this. We don't need this to be approved. You can do that at a later date. There's not another conceptual design report that we're doing and updating, though. This was, you know, this is the status point of where we are today. We will be taking the advice and the hearings of what we got from this and be moving on and starting to form the design work. We're going to hire a different designer or go out and hire a designer to do the 60%. The CDR will help guide the work that's being done by that future consultant as we start moving this forward. So it's important for us to be able to make sure that we're referring back to this conceptual design report, that Tigard felt that this is the right direction, we're moving in the right direction, and it's not done yet. We know that, but the principles that Jeb has talked about the guiding principles and the framework about what is important. Councilor Goodhouse, I think your voice was loud in helping to form and frame some of the values that we see and are important to us at the station. It's part of the MOU that we've assigned with the City of Tigard to help us move forward with a transit-oriented development view of this, a development view, as well as a safety and a transit standpoint. So we believe we've got some good information here. We will use this to help inform the 60% design, which is what is next. Frankly, people don't read plan and profile drawings. They're boring, they're black and white. This is a way that we try and infuse our understanding of design into a document that's readable, usable, and that can help the public and inform the public of what we're trying to do with these stations. What's the metal thought about this? That would be my answer to.
So Dave, are you saying that you don't ever need us to approve this, or we could delay it and approve it in a couple months if we get satisfactory answers? I guess my other question to you is, would you rather have, I mean, I don't know that you're going to get a unanimous vote tonight. So if that's important to you, you know, it sounds like you may end up with a 4-1, 3-2, or maybe it wouldn't even pass 2-3. I don't know. But how important is it to you to have this acted on in that context?
Well, we expected it to be acted on here. Portland City Council didn't take a vote on this. That wasn't something that they took a vote on. City of Tualatin didn't take a vote on this. So this is a local process. We're coming to you, informing you of the work that we're doing. It does not require a vote. It's not something that you require or we require. This was hey, we've been working together and this is the progress that we've made with working with your staff. We're here to present it to you. If you don't want to accept it or if you don't want to adopt it, I think that's okay. I think that can be okay. That's really your choice as your council and how you want to take an action or not take an action on a piece of document that we have worked collaboratively with your staff on.
All right, so Councilor Newton.
One more question, I'm sorry, Mr. Unsworth. So I found the design values on page 170. So if the City of Tigard Council doesn't take any action tonight, essentially this report is complete and the design values around Hall Street are the ones you're going to be using moving forward. Is that correct? That's correct, right? Correct. Okay, so yeah.
We haven't
so those are the design values, and us taking action in a month or two is not going to really change. It's so those are the values that you're working with moving forward.
It would be great to hear the council say that this has been good collaborative work. We support this. Go on and do good work. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. So,
or say we support or say we are in line with the design values or something. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay.
I think that is fine. We will, unless we hear something different that we're not doing the work right. We disagree with these values. We're going to probably continue on because this was a very collaborative process. You saw very early on the amount of outreach we did on this. So that's where we are today. This is a check-in, an opportunity for council to say, yeah, we think you're going the right direction. You don't need to take a vote. It won't hurt my feelings.
Yeah, and Mr. Unsworth, the point I was just trying to make was it's really the design values guiding us moving forward, not necessarily the plan pictures. Those will evolve. We're developing along the lines of where we go using the design values, not the drawings of the. That's the point I was trying to make.
That's correct. And if you don't vote on this, we will continue to work with your staff on a daily basis and work through all these things. So,
I think just so speaking at the staff level as well, you know, really what struck me working through the TOD program and the collaboration is that we are all after the same thing. I mean, Councillor Newton, you talked about integrating with downtown, and clearly that not only benefits downtown Tiger, but it's going to benefit our project as well. So we're fighting the same thing. We don't want to deliver an unsafe project at the same time. So these, I mean, there's obviously the detail is hugely important, but we are all working, I believe, to the same objectives.
So I want to check back with staff, both Mr. Pagenstacker and then Community Development Director Asher. Are you on the line, and do you want to comment on your preference for the council either to take action on this tonight or not, so that the council hears your opinions on that?
I am on the line. Why don't we let Gary give his response?
Well, my recommendation is that you do adopt the resolution accepting the CDR, the final CDR. And the resolution also includes another progress check, again, for TriMet to come back before 60% is solidified to show the progress they can at that point. So the point of that was that you feel like you're giving up your one chance. It's actually sort of an ongoing iteration that the design process works through, and you need to sort of be along with that. And prior to 60% is a good window to see how these design value statements have materialized in the project. So there's no practical effect, I don't think, in not accepting it. The presentation and acceptance is language right out of the memorandum of understanding. So you're just bound by that language, which isn't a requirement necessarily beyond the intention expressed there. And since Kenny was involved in drafting the MOU, I'll let him continue on that.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks, everyone. I'll be really brief. Gary and I talked about the staff recommendation. I'm supportive of it. And I'm glad you raised the MOU. The reason the CDR ended up being such an important document is because these MOU issues, many of which were the same, were under discussion 2 and 3 years ago, and the resolution was there will be a CDR, we will bring it to you, Tiger Council, you can accept it. And I think that's exactly what's happened. And the short answer, my short answer to your question, Mr. Mayor, is the council should, I think, vote to accept this document if the council is comfortable with where the project is on council's issues. They are not resolved, but they are on their way to resolution. And I don't disagree with anything that our partners at TriMet have said. It has been a collaborative process. We are making progress. Would we like to have more of a definitive word on many of these really important issues? Yeah, we would. And we're going to continue to ask. And it's not here yet. But that doesn't mean I don't think that the CDR is not valuable, and it's not going to change. So if you wanted to postpone your action tonight, you would be voting on the same document later, but we might have different background information.
All right, so council, I'm going to ask you whether any of you wants to make a motion or not, and then we can discuss whatever motion is made and potentially vote.
Let's see. Councillor Newton, I move to approve Resolution 2045.
Councillor Anderson, I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Does anyone want to have further dialogue on the relative merits of voting on this now, or any other final comments?
Mr. Mayor, I just read the resolution, and based on the conversations that we've had and the comments made by Mr. Asher and Mr. Pagenstacker, Section 1 of the resolution says the Tigard City Council accepts the final CDR with direction to resolve outstanding design issues identified by the Tigard City Council on April 21st, 2020. And the reason that was key to me is I realized this document is not going to change. I mean, the document that we have in front of us isn't going to change. And so the work becomes about moving forward on those key values that are identified on page 170 or 171, whatever it was. And so I guess the other option would be to not vote on it at all, but I don't know that delaying a vote on it for a couple of months is going to change the content, won't change the content of the document. So that's sort of my hair splitting.
All right. I think those are important additions to the conversation, and absolutely, important to understand the context in which we're acting. Anyone else? Council President Goodhouse.
Okay, there's been a motion. You don't just get to discuss freely.
I just reiterating the point that, I mean, I feel that we're staff is coming to TriMet. We have our different committees that are coming to TriMet. I still feel like it's falling on deaf ears. We've been working on this for years. Whether or not this, I think more of a, either a no on this resolution or coming back later has more of a, I think singles more of a what's going on here. I mean, we're moving slowly forward on some spots, but we're still drastically apart on other areas. And I don't know what's going to take to come around on all of these things. And I'm afraid that if we keep just going along with this and passing resolutions, that we'll find ourselves not getting fully what we want. I mean, we're still getting questions not answered. We're still not getting data. We're having committees sending letters that are not getting responses or straight answers. And something needs to be done to signal to the region that is, they're not playing ball tiger. This is not, we're not working as closely as we need to.
Well, I think the bottom line, Council President Goodhouse, is we want certainty that the project team doesn't feel like they can provide at this point, and that's the core of and crux of the issue. I think we want to continue to be good players as best we can, as long as we're getting what we need. I trust the staff's judgment about the fact that they know what we continue to need to be resolved. I frankly would add the answers to the FEIS questions. I'm sorry, the questions that are similar to the FEIS that I asked of Mr. Unsworth earlier. I think our questions from our staff on behalf of the council need to be added probably to this resolution of things that need to get addressed. I don't know that we need to formally do that, but I think of it that way. So we now have a motion that's been seconded. Councilor Lube and Councilor Anderson and Youth Councilor Calderon, do any of the three of you just raise your hand if you wish to comment on this? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for the vote to be called. No. Councilor Lube.
I would just say that, I appreciate the discussion and the discourse that we're having regarding this issue. And I certainly understand that there are continual outstanding issues that are evolving and going back and forth. And I think, it was helpful to have the meetings that Councilor Newton and I have had, simply to understand better where we are in the process and what sort of answers we should expect to have at this point. And I think that, echoing Councilor Newton, at this point in time, again, this report is not going to change. We're not going to get an updated report, but we are continuing to evolve these stations and what they look like and how they're situated through this design process. And a lot of these, questions and answers aren't going to be resolved until we continue to move forward with significant amount of time. And I think, TriMet has been working with us, and again, the additional meetings have been very much appreciated. And so I trust the staff in understanding that this process is continuing to move forward, and we have faith that TriMet is going to continue to work with us in good faith. And so that's kind of where I stand right now.
Youth Councilor Calderon.
Yeah, after hearing more discussion from the other councilors, I would agree with what everyone else is saying. We do need to make sure all our questions are answered, and since I'm not a voting member, I don't really need to know if I would vote yes or no on this, but I would make sure that all councilors consider that we do need these questions answered, and we do need to make sure that especially the Hall station is further adjusted to reflect what we want.
You could tell us how you would vote if you could.
I'm unsure, and that was my way of avoiding that. But
oh, okay. Council President Goodhouse, did you want to say something further?
The only question I had was that you'd mentioned a few add-ons or anything like that, so I didn't know if you were going to make any motion to amend and add anything into it.
I don't know if the chair has the authority to do that, but I was mentioning it probably more in spirit than anything else. But if somebody wanted to amend the resolution, we could look at that. Councillor Anderson, did you want to say anything?
Oh, this is just a time and date stamp on a huge project, and you know, there could be change orders down the line. There's a lot going on here, but the staff has confidence in their relationship with TriMet. I support this.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion to amend this? Otherwise, I'm going to call for a vote.
You'd have to withdraw.
Okay, Deputy City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I will actually read the number and title of the resolution first, if that's all right.
Yep, please.
Resolution number 20-45, a resolution accepting the Southwest Corridor Final Draft Conceptual Design Report Summer 2020 Final CDR with direction to resolve outstanding design issues identified by the Tigard City Council on April 21st, 2020.
And roll call vote, please.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse.
No.
Councillor Newton.
Yes.
Councillor Lube.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 20-45 passes 4-1. Thank you, Dave and Guy and Jeb. Appreciate your time tonight. And Tigard team, Mr. Pagenstecker, Mr. Asher, and the entire Tigard team working on this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, we'll move on to item number 7, which is consider approval of the final refreshed strategic plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Nicole Hendricks. I'm the Senior Management Analyst here at the City of Tigard in the City Manager's Office. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Okay. Can you see it in presentation mode? Sorry, one sec.
Yes, we could.
Okay, great. So I'm here tonight. I'm joined by Brandy Leos, our Senior HR Business Partner, Gary Pagenstecker, our Project Planner in Community Development, and Lloyd Purdy, our Economic Development Manager. And the 4 of us are members of the Strategic Plan Guidance Team, which is a group of about 15 staff members representing various departments across the city who are also here tonight listening in, providing moral support. And our guidance team has been coordinating efforts to develop the final refreshed strategic plan before you tonight. So we're going to provide an overview of the public input that we received and the validation on the refreshed vision and the strategic priorities, and also ask that you adopt the final plan provided in the council packet. In our process to refresh the plan, we have had a lot of input along the way from staff and boards and committees to community, and that's been through various formats such as stakeholder interviews, both internal and external, current state data analysis to identify needs, and more, which pointed to changes that needed to be made to the plan. And what we heard during that process is that our plan should have more measurable outcomes, more engagement from city staff as implementers of the plan, and emphasis on concepts of equity, safety, and climate action. And so there were many discussions about the concepts and words that we should emphasize in the refreshed plan. And based on that input process, the guidance team created a refreshed vision and priorities that were presented to council back in June. And in the months that followed, the guidance team sought validation again from the public on the vision and priorities through a survey. And we shared that survey through newsletters, social media platforms. We also created just paper half sheets to hand out and put on doors in neighborhoods and apartment complexes. We also collaborated with the chamber to spread the word about the survey. We took advantage of the DHM poll that I'm going to speak to in a little bit, and then also presented and asked boards and committees to give feedback on the plan. And then we also were doing internal newsletters for staff and presented at all staff meetings. So what we heard from the public in the past couple months about the final version, and we heard from a total of 175 people, was overall support for the final vision and strategic priorities. As you can see below, 91% support the vision, 92% support the strategic priorities. The majority agreed that the vision accurately reflects our community values. And then along with that, inside the 175 responses, we had 137 comments that were provided that really said that they appreciated the effort to incorporate equity, and also gave some feedback, which I'll discuss below, about how we kind of adjusted a few things to respond to those comments. And then we also did the DHM poll about digital access, but we stuck a question in there about community values in the beginning, just to ask if folks agreed with the values of equitable, walkable, healthy, and accessible, and if those are important to the community. And 88% agree, and that 88% is out of 302 people, and those are the preliminary results of the survey. So how we responded, we ended up reordering our strategic priorities. So originally we had strategic priority 1, SP1, as the walkable, and we actually moved that down to SP2, moved development down to SP3, and then we moved our customer service one up front, and that was based on feedback we heard from the community. We also modified specific language in each strategic priority, which Brandy, Gary, and Lloyd will go over in a little bit. And then we also worked to frame our vision. And our vision, which is Tigard, an equitable community that is walkable, healthy, and accessible for everyone, by adding definitions to those core values. Because a lot of the comments were, well, what does equity mean to you, or what does it mean for this plan? And so quickly, I'm just gonna go through those definitions because it'll support Gary and Brandy and Lloyd's presentation. So equity, we defined using a policy link resource as just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. Walkability, which is a walkable environment, supports and allows for a choice to participate in active forms of transportation, such as cycling, and includes people traveling with or without a mobility aid. A walkable community is foundational to an equitable and sustainable community. Accessibility, providing equivalent ease of use for opportunity for all people to interact with our services, processes, and infrastructure. And lastly, we had healthy, which is supporting the community's physical, economic, and environmental well-being, which also improves all other aspects of health, such as mental health. With that, I'm going to pass it along to Brandy to talk about our strategic priority 1.
Thank you, Nicole. My name is Brandy Leos. I'm the Senior HR Business Partner here at Tigard. So strategic priority 1 is to set the standard for excellence in public service and customer experience. During our community input phase, we heard that folks wanted us to center equity in all we do, as well as focus on creating an excellent customer service experience for the public we serve. As you just heard from Nicole, this sentiment led us to move this priority to the number 1 spot. You'll hear from all of us tonight that each of the strategic priorities in the refreshed plan document include a lot of actions and that we plan to take in implementing the plan, as well as metrics we'll use to measure our progress. Some of the ways we plan to implement strategic priority 1 involve weaving intentional inclusion throughout everything we do at the City of Tigard, refining how data is collected and used in the decisions we make, and working to promote a values-driven workplace culture that focuses on equity, public service, and the overall customer experience. A few of the metrics we will use to track the progress of strategic priority 1 are measuring turnover and retention among employees, tracking our responses to customer inquiries, and making decisions informed by data. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gary Pagenstecker.
Thank you, Brandy. So where strategic priority 1 focused on how the city staff conducts themselves for equitable outcomes, strategic priority 2 focuses on how we design and care for the city's public realm for equitable outcomes. Strategic priority 2, create a well-connected, attractive, and accessible pedestrian network. We heard from the community that most walkable in the vision was a troubling construction for many. And so this new strategic plan, the refresh, removes walkability from the vision and is now walkable as a strategic priority in service of an equitable community. And as Nicole read earlier, the definition of walkability, a walkable environment supports and allows for choice to participate in active forms of transportation, such as cycling, and includes people traveling with or without mobility aid, and therefore is foundational to an equitable and sustainable community. We also heard that the importance of the connectivity and accessibility of Tigard's public realm, its streets, its parks and open spaces, trails, and pathways. The new strategic priority 2, which is a simplified old goal 1, focuses on the extent and quality of the pedestrian network with just 2 objectives that implement them. Objective 2.1 is to create a well-connected pedestrian network linking all Tigard residents and businesses with actions to inventory, plan, and fund the network. Objective 2.2 is the pedestrian network is attractive, safe, and well-maintained. The word attractive had some buzz around it, and a synonym would be desirable, but the intent is of a quality that will incentivize its use, with actions implementing the objective to develop design guidelines and secure maintenance funding. Our metrics then track the use, expansion, and connectivity of the pedestrian network. With that, I'll hand it to Lloyd Purdy for strategic priority 3.
Good evening, Council. Our residents and stakeholders shared a range of input on the themes, the ideas, and the topics addressed in the updated vision statement and the updated objectives. Access to trails and community amenities, congestion along 99W, strengthening neighborhood and community identity are 3 examples of themes cited again and again in the community input phase that are relevant to strategic priority 3. This priority helps the city guide how private and public development improves the physical, the environmental, and our cultural landscape. 5 objectives are supported by more than 25 actions that highlight how the city can lead the way. And I'm going to share with you 3 examples of some of those actions. Things we can do, for instance, blending land use to make it easier for people to live and work and shop and access amenities like parks, all in and near their neighborhoods. We can support affordable housing and a range of housing options. We can improve sustainability and mitigate climate change impacts. Again, examples of programs written into this plan that show how we will achieve these outcomes. And we're prepared to measure the progress toward these outcomes and these 5 objectives and these 25 actions with more than 30 metrics just in this one section. This is a big body of work for the city. 30 different metrics that gauge impact and progress. Actions and metrics for strategic priority number 3 are mostly the responsibility of community development and public works departments, given the large role they play in guiding development, both public and private. So one underlying metric that does a lot of work for us is an example of measuring density of where people live, where people work, and where different types of economic activity take place. Other metrics include measuring where development dollars for housing and transportation investments are being spent in the city. So looking at where things are happening in the city and at what level of intensity. That's a summary from me on the input we gathered from the public on Strategic Priority 3 and how we updated the ideas and the statements there. Nicole is now going to give you a look ahead at what's next for the strategic plan implementation.
Thanks, Lloyd. So looking ahead to what's next, the guidance team is really excited and ready to move this plan forward by implementing the ideas and actions that we've listed. And we are going to do that starting with working and using this vision to guide and align our department work plans, the report card, tying in those audit measures, which we did in the strategic plan. Some of the performance audit measures identified in the audit are in the strategic plan. We're also going to start identifying and pursuing funding to make some of these actions happen. And we also want to keep the public informed of what we do, the progress that we make on the plan. We want to share this as it's our community vision and priorities, and then just continue sharing that. So with that, I'll end this by saying that this was a large team effort, and we are very excited about this plan and the public validation that it received in the last few months. And I want to say thanks to the guidance team and leadership team and a lot more people who were involved. Also, shout out to our design team who created a beautiful document that you see in the packet. And with that, we'll take any comments or questions you might have, and also that we are asking you to adopt the final plan. So thank you.
Well, Nicole, I think you captured it well, that this truly took a village of people to make happen. So I want to thank everyone on the team, and it wouldn't be possible with the amount of time we have to thank everyone that had an impact, but just know that we appreciate all of your contributions. Council, any questions or comments? And I also want to just point out that we are almost to 9 o'clock and have quite a few additional things on the agenda. So just as a heads up, if anyone needs a 2 or 3 minute break, please let me know, and we'll try to make that happen. But let's try to get through this agenda item at least. So questions or comments? Any councilor want to raise their hand? Council President Goodhouse.
I want to thank staff. Great job, great outreach. It's always great to see a thorough outreach to the community, get the citizens' involvement, really get buy-in to this. So great job, and I'll keep it short, but just excellent, excellent work, everyone.
Councilor Newton.
Yeah, thanks. The report was great, very well done, and several of the questions I had were actually answered in the presentation. So that was good. The only question I had was on strategic priority 1, because we're talking about customer experience. It seems like it might be helpful to have some more metrics that measure the customer perspective on their experience. So that's just a suggestion. A lot of them I noticed, I think was on page 6, are a lot of internal, metrics, which is great. But I didn't see a lot that measure the perception of the customer. So that was just a thought. All my other questions were answered, and a great report. And thank you, everybody, for all your work.
All right. Any other council comments or questions or a motion? Okay, I'm seeing thumbs ups from people. So.
Councilor Lube, I move to approve the final refresh strategic plan, and thank you, everyone.
Council President Goodhouse, I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councilor Newton?
Yes.
And Councilor Lube?
Yes.
Okay, the final refresh strategic plan is adopted unanimously. Thank you again. Oh, and that's good. I like the clapping. Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. We are going to convene now as the local contract review board for the next agenda item. This is to consider a contract award for administrative related software solutions and technology services to Tyler Technologies. Mr. Nollup and Manager Moody.
Good evening, Mayor Schneider and councilors. I am Christine Moody, Purchasing Manager. We are here tonight asking for your approval to award a contract to Tyler Technologies for the purchase and implementation services of administrative related software and technology services. This will be a 10-year software as a service agreement for a not to exceed amount of $6.4 million. The city explored multiple options for soliciting an enterprise system and found that Tyler Technologies holds a national cooperative contract through Sourcewell, a government service cooperative organization in which the city is a member. Under our public contracting rules, we are allowed to utilize cooperative contracts in order to obtain best pricing. Going this route allowed us to enter straight into contract negotiations, saving the city a lot of time. I will now turn this over to Mike Nollup, Information Technology Manager, to talk a little bit more about the need for this important project and what the software entails.
Thank you, Christine. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. So a quick history. I know we've heard a lot about Tyler Technologies and the Total Tyler project from all of our department directors over the past few months, but currently, for those listening this evening, all of our systems are siloed. They're all on their own. They're aging systems of over 10 years old. And so the current work that the council and the leadership of Tigard is going after, trying to use data to drive and make informed decisions, is just not possible in a siloed environment. So a lot of the majority of the performance audit measures relate to implementing new systems, being able to track data, and also part of the IT strategic plan basically reiterates that and says we need to update our data. We need to make less silos, more data available across platforms. So this project is huge. It's a 4-year project. It is a very large commitment of time and financial resources from Tigard taxpayers. It incorporates 9 to 12 different Tyler modules being implemented over the next 4 years. Those modules will have, or those programs will have over 24 modules that are implemented to create this Total Tyler system that will have a unified data platform, data consistency, reportability from cross platforms. So that is the design of the project in mind. So with that, again, this is a large scale project. This tackles one component of the implementation, which is the software as a service or licensing, and also the implementation from the Tyler Technologies team and data conversion to make this happen from our existing systems. IT staffing resources have been boosted during this budget to accommodate for a new team to tackle this project. And you will see probably additional resource requests for staffing in departments in the future, just so that we can maintain a consistent level of service while taking our subject matter experts to focus on implementing the new systems. So with that, we're recommending the contract review board approve the contract with Tyler Technologies for $6.4 million, and I will answer any questions that you may have.
So Mr. Nollup, do you mind, and maybe this would be better addressed by another member of the team, but you know, I think, and I will admit, I'm still having a little bit of trouble adjusting to the idea that I don't buy my software anymore. You know, Microsoft wants me to rent my Office, you know, programs and whatever. I mean, many software companies are kind of going that way. It doesn't feel great to not own your stuff, I guess. Though I think we're seeing as the world evolves and becomes more complicated, that, you know, owning something that's obsolete in a couple of years is not that useful anyway. But can you comment more broadly on that? And part of why I think that context is important is this is a big financial commitment for the city to be making over the long term for something we're not even going to own. And I guess I want to make sure our community understands the broader reasons for that and what the implications are.
Sure, absolutely. I think you pointed out a great example that most people are familiar with Microsoft renting you licenses of your Office products, and that's essentially what we are doing here. So, while you're correct, there are disadvantages to the fact that we don't own them. When you purchase software outright and install it yourself on your own architecture and your own systems, you're responsible for maintaining it, for patching it, for making sure that the data is backed up. Part of the costs that are involved with this process and the software as a service is all of that's done for us, which decrease staff time and maintenance. Other components to it, if you were to purchase it, we would have a much larger upfront cost, and then we would have service maintenance over time. So you're still paying the ongoing rates year after year, they're just smaller. So with this software as a service, we have just distributed the costs a little more evenly across the contract. Outside of that, I can just say this is the industry trend. You know, we're in IT looking at, we're not going to probably purchase more hardware here in our data centers, or very little. We'll move it up into some kind of a cloud service. So it just matches the path and the tendency that the industry is going, and the path and the tendency that Tigard is going for pretty much most of its IT services, if not all of them, at some point in the future.
And the way this is written, or the way I understand it, if we just stop paying, we stop getting to use it. Is that essentially how, at some point, how it works? And then who owns the data, you know, at the end of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Tigard does retain ownership of the data, and part of the agreement, if we ever terminated the agreement, was Tyler Technologies would have to give us a copy of that data. It probably wouldn't be wise at any point in time until we have a replacement solution to stop paying the bill, but we do have some great exit clauses built into this contract. If we at any point in time would ever switch products or make a decision to move in a different direction, we have those capabilities and can plan for it.
Okay, other council members have questions or comments? Council President Goodhouse.
I was going to add that even though it might seem like quite the upfront cost, and also how it's we don't own it, I think it's also on the flip side, it's just great that we're all going to be on the same system, is all going to be communicating, and so much of the different accessibility and problems we'll be able to solve. And the untold cost we'll save, I think, in the future of having that, or finding where maybe areas in the city that can be changed or tweaked by the data we'll have. I'm looking forward to see how we can become more efficient as a city, have more data, and become more streamlined. It is kind of a little nerve-wracking, like the mayor said, to not own it and have it, but at least we have the clause where we can still have that data and transfer it on elsewhere if we need to. And I got to ask, where are you at? I know that's a that's a fake background. I saw it for a second. I was like, wait, why is it light there?
Yes, I'm unfortunately in Town Hall, which is not as pretty as the background that I have here right now. It's just a white wall in the back. So.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Newton.
Yeah, just real quick. Thanks, Mike, for the report. And I think the one benefit to this is going to be getting all these systems integrated. I just remember when I worked there, and all these sort of one-offs made it difficult sometimes to get reporting or data that we needed to make good decisions. Just a curiosity, I noticed your memo said that there were three lines we might add later. And so I assume you as the IT manager will have a process in place that determines, you know, when we might add another, what are they, the e-ticketing, the enterprise content manager, and the meeting and agenda management software. Would you be having some sort of a process to evaluate whether or not that made sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
As the IT manager, I'm thinking.
And it's definitely not a decision that myself would make as the IT manager. We work with the departments that would be the owners and the users of that software to make sure that that's the best business decision for them at that point in time. The reason that they're optional is, well, at this point in time, the police are not ready to do an e-ticketing, but we knew Tyler had one, so we got a quote for it and included in the contract, so we wouldn't have to go through another contracting process. And then the enterprise document management system is one that we don't know if it's going to be needed. The standard contract or document management system is included and will be implemented. The advanced features cost more money. We'll see if they're going to be needed in the future. The agenda management product is being revamped by Tyler Technologies, has a timeline of about 18 months, and we wanted to buy ourselves a little time before committing to see if that was a good purchase for the city.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's helpful.
Okay. Youth Councilor Calderon, you were next, and then Councilor Lube, I see you.
Yeah, I would just like to say when I was reading this proposal, I just became very jealous that my school is not like this, because I do have to say it is very inconvenient when my teacher posts a Word document, but my computer can only use Google Docs, and then they have me submit it as like a PDF, and then they have all these different systems, and it would just be so much more effective to just have one system, and I think that that can really be accomplished through this. So I'm very jealous of the city.
I kind of, to Youth Councilor Calderon, to respond to that, this is kind of tangential, but you know, I look at this partly as an investment that we're making so that we don't look like the Oregon Unemployment Department or the Oregon DMV, which is, you know, still using DOS-based programs and can't even find programmers that know the languages anymore that some of that stuff's written in. I mean, that's embarrassing, and I hope I want to make sure that we are never in that position. Councilor Lube?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo on that, I think, you know, just understanding and helping the staff just have a better, well-rounded experience, just to be able to work with each other. And I know, you know, even in my year and 9 months on council, we constantly hear, well, the software can't do that, or we can't pull that information. And, you know, I'm just excited to be able to have access to all of that. And I think this actually also wraps in really nicely with the strategic plan of providing better customer service, you know, and having more streamlined resources, and just being able to move the city forward, to be able to answer questions quickly and have less frustrations with software. And I'm really excited, and I hope the staff is really excited too. And it's a big investment, but I think it's one that is going to make the city much better.
Are you excited enough to make a motion?
Sure. Let's see. I move to award the contract award for administrative-related software solutions and technology services to Tyler Technologies, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract.
Council President Goodhouse, I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Snyder?
Yes.
Director Goodhouse?
Yes.
Director Newton?
Yes.
Director Lube?
Yes.
Okay, the contract award for administrative-related software solutions and technology services to Tyler Technologies is adopted unanimously. Thank you, team, and great presentation. And I think this is one that's going to be important to keep the community updated on, given the size and importance of it. I think we need, you know, it may seem boring to some, but I think it's important that we keep the storytelling and the communications about why and what and why this matters front and center, so that our community really understands the value that it brings.
Excellent. We'll do, for sure.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you. We will reconvene as the City Council for the remainder of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is item number 9, consider resolution extending the city's emergency declaration related to COVID-19. City Attorney Rahala.
Good evening, Council. This is the 5th extension related to the city's emergency declaration on COVID-19. This declaration will extend the emergency until noon on December 2nd. Again, the city's emergency can extend as long as the duration of the emergency conditions. We are not expecting that to be resolved by December 2nd, but we will revisit it at that time. This resolution is identical to previous ones with one exception. That is removing the late fee waiver shutoff relief. That will be combined with the next agenda item in a separate resolution. The idea was to decouple that from the emergency extension and pair it with the relief related to related to utility relief. So other than that, the declaration is identical to previous ones.
Any discussion or a motion?
Councilor Anderson, I move to approve resolution number 20-46.
Councilor Newton, I second.
Been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the ordinance.
Resolution number 20-46, a resolution of the City of Tigard extending the city's emergency related to COVID-19.
City Recorder, roll call vote, please.
Councilor Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councilor Newton.
Yes.
Councilor Lube.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 20-46 is adopted unanimously. Thank you very much, City Attorney. And we'll move on to item number 10, which is to consider resolution to update the Tigard Aid Utility Billing Assistance Program. Mr. LaFrance.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director. Before you this evening is a resolution that will update the Tigard Utility Billing Aid Assistance Program. This is a program that was put forth this spring in response to the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic to provide aid to utility payers within this that the City of Tigard serves. And last week we gave you an extensive presentation, did some Q&A with Council on the program. Before you this evening is the resolution we brought to you last week, where Council agreed to move forward with those actions and also asked for one further item. So first off, just to quickly cover, the resolution that's before you will expand the program, will align it with the Washington County CARES program, will allow for payment of an entire bill for people who have been impacted by COVID, either through unemployment and expanding it to underemployment due to COVID. Payment up to $500 for commercial and commercial businesses and customers that have been impacted by COVID. Provide retroactive benefits to those that have qualified under the prior program. Provides a total benefit of $750,000, and it will continue through January 1st or until that budget has been expended. Council also asked that we provide aid to our customers that have been impacted by COVID and are not and because they are in multifamily housing, are not direct customers of our utility. Staff is working with legal, with our with bond counsel, and with our rate analysts to make sure that we bring forward a proposal to council that will minimize the risk to the city that anybody would protest that use. So we expect that we'll have that before you in the next couple of weeks. We've made good progress towards doing that. We need a little bit more time and could not include that in tonight's resolution.
So Toby, do you have an estimate of when that would be?
I expect that we'll have the issues resolved by next week, and that we could then get a resolution drafted next week, which would mean we'd be able to get it to council in early October, probably by the second business meeting in October would be reasonable.
Thank you.
So like I said, we've been making some good progress. So with that, staff recommends approval of the resolution that's before you this evening.
Thank you. We had a pretty robust discussion on this last week, but we can certainly discuss it further. Council President Goodhouse.
I wanted to clarify two topics. Toby, you were saying that it would be retroactive based off the amounts previous, or it'd be retroactive based off the full amounts? I guess what I was trying to understand is for the residential, if they're behind on 3 months of the water bill, let's say, would their full bill be taken care of 3 months back?
Call
And would
in
the same
host.
thing be would the same thing be on the businesses if they're behind on their rent for 3 months? Would that also go back 3 months at 500, or can you clarify that topic?
Yeah, so we will. It's actually it's a two-part. So there are customers that have already applied for in the prior months and have received $40 worth of aid. We will go back, and since they already qualified under the old program, we will provide them with the current amount of aid in this resolution retroactively. Additionally, if we get new applications that can show that they would have qualified in prior months, we will also retroactively provide them with that benefit.
We should be planning to structure the
Thank you.
the one for folks that live in rented properties where they don't pay directly. We should be, I think, planning to apply the same logic.
That would be the plan, yes.
Okay. Okay, other questions or comments or a motion?
Councillor Newton, I move to approve Resolution 20-47.
Councillor Anderson, I second that.
Okay, City Recorder, please read the number and title of the ordinance.
Resolution number 20-47, a resolution expanding eligibility for Tigard's program to provide a monthly utility credit for residential and business customers affected by COVID-19, waiving late fees and suspending shutoffs.
City Recorder, a roll call vote, please.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Absolutely yes.
Council President Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councillor Newton.
Yes.
Councillor Lube.
I abstain.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0 with one abstention. Okay, we'll move on to non-agenda items. We have none. Administrative report, City Manager Wine.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council. I have just a few administrative report items for you tonight. One is, I think I have four, but I'll try to make them fairly brief. So one is Public Safety Advisory Board. As you know, that we were accepting applications for creating the Public Safety Advisory Board through September 16th. So applications are now closed and the community caucus has begun. So we're asking the community to review the 38 applications that we have received. We had one person who opted to withdraw because of the time commitment. Community feedback will be collected through September 30th, and we've identified a potential facilitator who can work with our both internal stakeholders in designing the work of the board and also help define the structure and the foundation to support the board's work. So that continues, the creation of the board continues, and you'll see all that soon. You can look also on our website to see the profile and applications of the folks who applied.
City Manager Wine, on that front, can I just ask a quick question about the security of the caucus participation? Because it appears like it's kind of a web form voting. How are we going to ensure that it's Tigard residents that are participating in that?
I'm going to have to check on that, and I will respond to you tomorrow. As I understand it, I understand that we got a question about it today, and I didn't have an answer as we went into this meeting, but I can respond to you in the morning on that.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's a good question. I just don't have an answer real time here. Let's see, on the COVID. Go ahead.
I was to say on that topic too, to make sure that if there's any way to make sure the person only votes once as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's see, on the COVID front, maybe I'm reporting on things you have already heard. Washington County Public Health has agreed to recommend to wait to move into phase 2 until the region understands what the impacts of the Labor Day holiday and the movement of people all around the region because of evacuations are going to affect what's going on with the pandemic and with infections. So there's some discussion about businesses opening in the interim, and I've been calling that sort of phase 1.5, but we will have more guidance about that from the governor in the next week or so. We also want to be sure, I've mentioned our employee survey a couple times on administrative report the last couple of weeks, and one of the things that we found from that survey, and you're all aware of, is that we're trying to figure out the kinds of support that we might offer to our employees who are parents, following the feedback that we got through the survey. And that's, you know, as everybody goes back to school and families are juggling all the multiple demands of work and school and everything else, we're trying to figure out how we can best, as an employer, support our staff while we're still in this time. Wildfires and smoke and evacuations, I hope you are all enjoying dramatically improved air quality. I think we all are since last Friday. And the city opened back up to whatever we're calling our new normal. So it's not post-COVID yet, but it's post-wildfires and still working with pandemic. So I want to thank the police department who worked throughout the smoke and the evacuations all of last week, even while the city, we were in an even greater closure mode than we have been in the past in terms of folks working. On the communications front, this month in September 10th and 11th were our busiest days on our social media platforms. We had 10% increases in our followers on Twitter and Instagram, and 5% increases on our Facebook followers. And we have followers in the thousands on those platforms. So we also had 29,000 visits to our Community This Week page during the week of the 8th through the 14th. So there's been lots of traffic on the channels where we're providing information.
Wow. I was going to say, City Manager Wine, can we just commend, you know, the AM and PM updates and the amount of communication that went out? I mean, it was just fantastic.
Thank you for mentioning that, and of course I'll pass that along to staff. And yes, we were all saying wow also, and I think it's achieving something that we wanted to do many years ago, which is to be a reliable news source for our community. So that's great. Next couple of days we're going to be having all staff meetings, which we've been doing almost monthly since earlier in the spring, and we usually try to welcome our new staff members when we have all staff meetings. So we're welcoming at least 10 new staff who have joined the city in the last quarter, which you can imagine some of you have experienced too. Starting a new job during this time is just a different kind of an experience. So we're happy to be welcoming new staff to the city where we've done some hiring. We'll be covering some other things like the employee survey and updates on our anti-racism action plan, which you'll also be hearing about soon, and the Public Safety Advisory Board. A couple of other just random notes on administrative report. I mentioned our digital access survey last week, and it's now closed, and we're getting our final top line results, so we hope to report those to you in early October. We were also informed from the Department of Justice that the city is going to be receiving a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice. The police department applied for funding to support, the term is criminal justice initiatives, but there are two parts to what the police department was aiming for. One was to hire a consultant to develop a training curriculum that's related to the police academy being closed during this year, and figuring out a way to sort of adapt while that is happening, and also creating the virtual community academy that's going to support the Public Safety Advisory Board. So that's good news. We appreciate using somebody else's money to support what we're doing. And then a couple of other upcoming items that you probably know about. We canceled your October 6th meeting because we were not sure about the status of National Night Out. We don't have any new news about any communities having National Night Out events, but I just want to remind you, at the moment, we've still got your council meeting for the 6th is canceled. And if there are last minute decisions related to any communities who are having virtual meetings, we'll be sure to let you know that next week. I think that's it. Today is National Voter Registration Day, so everyone's encouraged to register to vote, and the deadline for that is October 13th. So there's a place to register or verify your current information, and it's on OregonVotes.gov.
City Manager Wine, has there been any I was just thinking about National Night Out, and has there been any guidance now on Halloween from the county or public health?
No. We have daily updates in our reconstitution team and have been asking about guidance at the county level about Halloween, and the word we're getting back is that those are going to be event specific guidance that's still subject to all the guidance we're working with right now. We continue to stay in touch with the Tiger Downtown Alliance, who is the one who leads our event, our Trick or Treat Main Street, and they're coming up. They have a preliminary plan for a way to have their Halloween event, but it's not finalized yet. So we haven't shared anything that we're hearing until it's in final. So no new public health guidance on those events or about trick or treating generally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more concerned just about community messaging about trick or treating, and I think what will happen if there's not clear direction soon is that people are going to make their own plans and do what they want to do, and I would prefer that we have more clear community direction, but that may not be possible.
So far, it's not forthcoming at the county and health department level, but we can certainly put our heads to something that we can put out. It's just not, we don't have anything specific than that.
And I don't think it's our role. I mean, we're not in the public health business. Youth Councilor Calderon?
Yes, I just wanted to say real quickly on the note of voter registration for anyone who's watching. If you're 16 or 17 in Oregon, you can actually register to vote. I am a registered voter, so if any parents or community members are watching who have children, I would encourage you to tell them that they should register to vote.
And the advantage of that is when they become eligible, they automatically get a ballot, right?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. Okay, City Manager Wine, anything further?
That's all. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
All right. And am I noting that this is going to be your last administrative report?
Yes. Beginning at your next meeting, you will be hearing from Interim City Manager Kathy Nyland, who will be giving administrative report, and we'll also begin the transition of you meeting with Kathy, and you'll see a lot more of Kathy in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, City Manager Wine.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to recess into executive session. We're going to executive session to discuss labor negotiations under ORS 192.660 subsection 2D. All discussions are confidential and those present may disclose nothing from the session. Representatives of the news media are allowed to attend executive sessions as provided by ORS 192.660 subsection 4, but must not disclose any information discussed. No executive session may be held for the purpose of taking any final action or making any final decision. City Council will adjourn from the executive session. So this concludes the public part of our meeting tonight. And Council, we are moving to the next Teams invite. So please end this call and join the next one. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, Tigard.